All right. All right, there we go. We should be all set. So to start out, I want to introduce myself. My name is Nikki. I'm the VP at Palm Beach Tech. And this workshop this morning is part of our career fair this morning, which is 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. But it is in a collaboration for a diversity inclusion event with SIMS South Florida, ISACA South Florida, Palm Beach Tech, and Venture Café Miami. So 4 great organizations have come together to make this the first of a series. So we're actually planning this again. Hopefully you'll see us doing something similar in February. So the topic that we've been having, and if anybody didn't join us yesterday, is building an inclusive tech community. So that was yesterday. We had some different keynotes, different speakers, panels. If anybody missed the first day yesterday, we did record that as well, and we'll be able to get that information out. And then today, which I'm going to try to share my screen here really quickly. We've got, let me see if I can find it. Because we've got a few different speakers that I'd like to share with you really quickly here. Let's see if I could find it. Let me know if you can see my screen. All right. So basically today we're going to have 4 different speakers, and hopefully you guys can see this okay. We'll actually have Dorothy this morning, which is our first speaker, which I'll give you a chance in a moment to introduce yourself before we get started. Joshua Foster, Jackie Mitchell, and then Claire Marrero. So each of them are from different organizations, but going to be speaking on different topics. Everything from how to get into cybersecurity, how to own your own career, asking different questions or the best questions to interview the interviewer. So definitely, you know, they're going to be at 9:30, 10:30, 11:30, and 12:30. So we definitely have a packed schedule here, but wanted to make sure that everybody has that. And if there's one workshop that you're interested in over another, it's the same Zoom link. So the same link that you guys are using to get in here, it's the same one throughout the day. So you can just pop in and out as you wish. And then as Dorothy begins her presentation, I'm going to drop a few links here in chat so that you guys will have the links again to any of the workshops, any of the follow-up information from yesterday, and then also the actual link, if you don't have it, to the Career Boost, the career fair itself. So I want to go ahead and introduce Dorothy. Dorothy is coming to us from CareerSource Broward. And Dorothy, if you'd like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your role there, and of course about the organization, and then please feel free to share your screen and go right into it.
Sure. So my name is Dorothy, like Nikki mentioned, and I work at CareerSource Broward. I am a facilitator and a career coach trainer. I facilitate a lot of different workshops for job seekers, from resume writing, interview, social networking, media, quite a diverse group of different workshops and webinars, since now we have the pandemic. So we're doing a lot of webinars. And now to tell you a little bit about CareerSource Broward, we are basically a workforce center. We have a lot of them throughout the state. I happen to be located in the Broward County. We do have 3 centers, one in Oakland Park, one in Davie, and also Coconut Creek, which is the one that I'm at. We also have a few throughout the states. Like I said, we have some in Palm Beach, we have some in Miami, and so forth. So that's just to tell you a little bit about our organization. Also, if you were wondering a little bit about my credentials, I am a certified, like I say, certified resume writer, recently a nationally certified online professional expert. If you're wondering a little bit about what that is, that's just basically helping individuals create and write their professional profile. And let's say, for example, putting it up on LinkedIn and their bios. So that's just to tell you a little bit about me and my background and my organization. So I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, if that is okay. About that, let's make sure we're sharing the right screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, all right. So I gave you pretty much my presentation. Let me go back up, if that's okay. If you do want to contact me, here's my email address. It is drichardson@careersourcebroward.com. I do like to go ahead and, anybody who have any questions or comments relating to career development, I definitely can help you. You can just drop me an email and I will definitely respond back to you. All right, so let's go ahead and get into video interview and what you should know about video interview. I just want to go ahead and start off with just letting you know that pretty much this here has definitely grown and developed, especially like I said, with the pandemic and us having to practice social distancing. You're going to see a lot of organizations and companies adapt to doing video interviewing. It was always there. Probably not many companies did use video interview. Some of them were trying it out, and for those it worked out for them, they kept it. But of course, with everything that's going on, business has to continue. And of course, companies are always looking for candidates. So you're probably going to see, if you haven't had a video interview yet, you're probably, if you're applying for jobs, don't be surprised if a company wants to interview you and they're going to invite you to a video interview. So we're going to learn the basics of what you should know about video interview, because it also makes you much more competitive in the workforce market. All right, so let's go through the agenda. The first thing we're going to spend some time and talk about is preparing yourself for a video interview. I like to tell everyone, when you are preparing for a video interview, a lot of times you're going to need that extra time. And the reason why is because you're going to deal with a lot of different aspects. From your technology, from your environment, from even your attire and background and so forth. So it does take extra time to prepare for a video interview. So we're going to talk about some of the important aspects that you want to know when you have a video interview or an invitation. The second thing we're going to talk about, of course, is preparing your environment. And I'm sure some of you out there are preparing your environment or have prepared your environment if you've done a video interview in the past. But this is also very important. You want to make sure that you choose somewhere that's quiet, you can focus, and you can perform successfully. So we're going to talk about some of the different things you want to keep in mind. And of course, the third part is, in order to do a video interview, you definitely are going to see it. It has a lot to do with technology. So that's something you definitely need to also make sure that you have capabilities of doing, you learn it, and you're prepared to do that video interview, no matter what kind of video interview you're going to be given. And then in the conclusion, we're going to just talk about some things that you don't want to do in a video interview. And then we're also going to address some questions, because sometimes you will find that interviewers will ask you the questions and you want to make sure that you're prepared for general questions and also new questions that they can ask. And one of the biggest questions that we find that candidates have issues with answering sometimes is a situational question. So what I've done is I've thrown in a method in there that can actually help you go through answering and responding to a situational question. So those are basically some of the things that we're definitely going to cover today in this webinar. All right, so the first thing is, I like to show everyone a diagram process of when you're invited to do a video interview. These are the steps that you're definitely going to go through. Number one, you have to apply for the position. You have to go ahead and get your bid in, whether it is something that you're answering through a job board or social networking, or even through, I would say, let's say social media. LinkedIn is a good example of answering, responses from some of the companies that may want to think about hiring you. So you definitely have to get your bid in with your resume and an application if that's something, that they want from you. Once you go ahead and give your information, and that's where it's going to go through the selection process. So you're going to see hiring recruiters, decision makers, filter through all of the candidates. And that's, of course, where they're going to make their selection in who is it that they like to go ahead and go to the next level. Now, between 2 and 3, there are some times where you may have a few things to do, whether it's a pre-screening call or a phone interview or even an assessment. And then you'll find that sometimes that you may not have that to go through. So you'll just go ahead and jump into a video interview once they send you that invitation. Okay, once you get that invitation, of course, that's where all of that preparation comes in. And you're going to prepare yourself for whichever type of video interview they're going to give you. It can either be a live one or a recorded one. So we're going to go through some details for both different types of video interviews. Once you're done with that, of course, it's going to go through another filtration process where they're going to see, of course, and discuss who is the better candidate to move on. Now, a lot of people think that it stops at the 4th stage, but in many cases, it can go up to another 3 more stages. So you'll have some companies who may stop at 4, or you may have some companies who may have some other stages. So I always tell everyone, be prepared to do more if you have to after the 4th stage. But those are the 4 core areas where if you're invited to do a video interview, you have to go through these. All right, so we're going to actually start with the first one, which, all right, preparing yourself for a video interview. So you can be invited to 2 different types of video interview. It can be a 2-way or a 1-way. So that's basically what they call video interviews, a 2-way or a 1-way. We're going to talk about the 2-way first. Now, the 2-way interview, you basically interact with either a hiring manager or recruiter, and this is going to be live through a web conferencing software. So what kind of web conferencing software? You can use anything from Skype. Yes, even FaceTime. You'll have some, decision makers who will use FaceTime if they have to. Zoom is also a very popular platform. WebEx, and believe it or not, yes, Google Hangouts. The only thing I tell everyone is if you're ever invited to do a interview through Google Hangouts, you want to make sure that you do your research. It's coming from the company. The email is a company email, and sometimes you may want to even go ahead and verify and give a call that you do have and confirm that you do have a video interview with a person at that organization. You're also going to see that possibly you can be invited to do a video interview through customized platforms. And for example, some of them, I've mentioned them here. HireVue is one, VidCruiter is another one, or even something like Jobvite. There are a lot of them out there, but these platforms are specifically catered for video interviews. Okay, now the customized platforms, the good thing about customized platforms is that a lot of times they do have integration systems with an ATS software that sometimes can include AI, artificial intelligence. So a lot of times you will find that companies will probably use customized platforms, or they'll even use, the ones that I've mentioned earlier. But the reason why they do like customized platforms is because it has an integration system, whether they can invite them through a calendar, or it has a system where it can pick up, believe it or not, with artificial intelligence, facial recognition. It can also pick up keywords, eye contact, all of those high technology features. A lot of these platforms can have them. So I like to tell everyone, if you know you're going to do a video interview through any of these customized platforms, you may want to do a little bit research on artificial intelligence in some of these customized platforms. So that way you have an idea what to expect. All right, so let's talk about the 1-way. So now that we understand the 2-way is a live one, let's talk a little bit about the 1-way. This typically comes in early on in the interview process. So a lot of times where you may have that phone call screening or that assessment to do, you may just go ahead and jump into doing a video interview in this fashion. And the reason why it's very automated for a lot of companies. Okay. In this type of video interview, you record yourself answering pre-scripted questions, there is no live person on the other end. So, like I said, they set it up where they will send you a link and you will actually go ahead and, probably practice. Some of them will have where you can practice on their platform, or you may have to do it on your own. But you will go ahead and answer, like it says, pre-scripted questions. You can also have a recording or a text going across the screen. So those are two different fashions that you can have if you're doing a one-way interview. In a one-way interview, it does come with specific instructions at the beginning, and it does oftentimes there are time limits set on them where you may have about a minute to read it, or a minute or two, probably another minute to process it, and then maybe an extra 2 or 3 minutes to answer it. So don't be surprised if you do have a timer when it comes to answering each question. So I do tell everyone, you do want to take time to specifically read the instructions when you have to do a one-way interview. All right, so why do companies conduct video interviews? Well, number one, I tell everyone it's definitely cost effective for both, believe it or not, the candidate and the company. Number one, you don't have to drive or fly. And number two is for the company, it's just something that they can just set up. They don't actually need to take time out of their schedule or reschedule. Sometimes they can always go back and look at the videos. It is a convenient interview process for companies. And not only that, one of the best things about it is you're able to perform a video interview from any location. Let's say a company is a global company and they're looking for someone in a particular demographic area. All they would need to do is just go ahead and set up a video interview through one of the platforms, and they can just actually send it out and the person can send in their recording. So that's basically something that facilitates things for not only the company but also the candidate. So in a one-way interview, like I said, it's become very popular. And now we're finding a surge of companies using video interviews. So this is why I tell everyone, you really do want to learn about video interviewing, because as you could see, we're actually doing this, from the comforts of our homes. And a lot of people have meetings, and that goes along with interviews. So I always tell everyone, this is probably going to become the new norm when you're doing job search, not only doing it online, meeting with people online, but also doing your interviews online is something that's probably going to become more and more popular. And especially, like I said, with this pandemic going on, it has actually advanced it and escalated it. In part, it does provide the hiring team a much more structured and consistent method for assessing candidates. So what do we mean here is basically that they will actually set aside a time aside to go and review all of the candidates. It's not something where we still do love face-to-face in person. If you can definitely get one, I always encourage someone to get one. But in part, on the side for the company, this is something that allows them to review all of the videos, or jump into a live one and be able to go ahead and do it from even the comfort of their office or so forth. So in part, they do like to use, like I said, video interviews. And not only that, let's say they are interviewing a group of candidates for a particular position. Every candidate in that group is going to pretty much get the same questions. It's going to be delivered in the same manner. Everyone's going to get a link in that group. And that, not only that, everyone's going to have their opportunity to shine. So I always tell everyone that that's where that preparation comes in, and it's really, really important. All right, so now we're going to talk about getting prepared as much as possible. All right, so one question that I do find that a lot of candidates, sometimes forget to ask, and it is a good question to ask because we're dealing with technology every day, and we're having to learn new things. it might be a good question if you're speaking to someone who's coordinating that interview for you or even sending you an email. A good question to ask is that, by any chance, would they have a backup plan just in case technical difficulties can arise? As we could see, sometimes, microphones may not work well, or maybe your camcorder or something. So a lot of times this actually helps when you do have a backup plan, how you can connect. So that way you are able to complete the video interviewing. All right, so another thing is you want to make sure to do your research and your homework. Study up on who you will be interviewing with. If you happen to know that person, you definitely want to check out LinkedIn, see if they do have a profile on LinkedIn. Not only that, know what products or services the company offers. So you definitely want to make sure that you do your research on the company and know what products and services, because we all know they definitely will probably ask, well, what has interested you to apply for the job? Why is it that you're applying for a position with them? Find out what's happening at the company also within that industry. You can also see where their rank is, whether they're Fortune 500, Fortune 100, and so forth. So it's always to go deep and do those type of research on the organization. All right, so I always tell my customers that always be prepared to ask questions. And it goes for every single interview. I tell everyone, whether it's a face-to-face, whether it is a phone interview, and yes, even a video interview. Okay, so have questions prepared to ask when the interviewer says, do you have any questions or comments? And normally that will come sort of like towards the ending the interview. This definitely helps to show your genuine interest in the job and also in the company. I always tell everyone that it is a strong aspect when you do ask certain questions about the company, because that's when they actually see that you are interested about certain things. We all know when you ask questions and you want to make sure that you get things right, they do, pretty much it does show your interest. All right. So basically, like you see him here, he's studying, he's just making sure that, he has some questions ready to ask when it comes time to asking those questions. All right. So another thing is I always tell everyone that assess the company's culture. And that's really, really important, especially if you're seeking to get employed to an organization. You want to make sure that you align with their beliefs, their culture, their values, their goals, and so forth. So I tell everyone, always learn the company's culture. Also check websites that the company have. You can check out their blogs. And of course, I always encourage people to, yes, check social media profiles for the organization. In most cases, the information is going to align throughout all of them. Now, the blog pretty much is something that I tell everyone you may want to check out first, because the blog basically tells anyone who's reading it, what are the latest and greatest conversations, issues, topics, or resolutions to certain things that the company's talking about. So that's a good place to go ahead and start. Also check out, like I said, social media. Social media, in other words, their Facebook page. You also want to check their LinkedIn page. And like I said, things will pretty much align as far as information. So you definitely want to go ahead and check their social media page, whether it's, like I said, Facebook, Instagram also is very popular, and their LinkedIn page. All right. So if you also know someone who does work for the company, that's also a great way to ask them about the culture. So that's a nice insight to find out, how is it working with them? What is the tone like with all the employees and with dealing with customers, or also the vibe? Is it a relaxed environment, or is it a very formal environment? Also, when it comes to dress code, that's really important. When it comes to dress code, you may have to, you might be expected to dress conservative or business casual or even uniform. So these are some great questions to ask if you know someone who does work at an organization. So you're basically giving them an informational interview. So basically they're telling you certain things about the organization. All right, so this here, I always like to ask people, if you're working with a recruiter, in most cases, that recruiter is the person who, especially trying to get a particular job at an organization that has given you an interview. If you're working with a recruiter, it's always good to ask that recruiter many questions because it's their job to go ahead and help prepare you for that job. So I put together some examples of some questions that you can ask a recruiter. For example, a good question can be, how many people do they feel will be on that video call? Sometimes they'll be able to answer that question for you, and probably sometimes, not. They may not know. But the bulk of the information should pretty much be given to you by the recruiter. What will the hiring team be looking for? Now, that is an area that the recruiter should be able to tell you what kind of skills, experience, and what is it the things that the company emphasize on that you align yourself with. And do they have any kind of prep material that they can help you with, whether they're directing you to their website or they're sending you information pertaining, whether it's a job description scope in detail, or even brochures. So these are just some examples of some questions. If you are working with a recruiter to be hired by a company and they have invited you to do a video interview, you definitely want to dialogue and have some questions for the recruiter. Okay. All right, so moving on, let's talk about attire now. What do you wear for a video interview? Now, this is important because even though you may not be physically in front of the interviewer or interviewers, they still can see you through, of course, the webcam. So we're going to talk about that. And one of the most important things is I tell everyone, first impression is very crucial. So you definitely want to make sure that you dress professional for your interview. They will definitely be making instant judgments before they even speak to you once they see you on camera. So I tell everyone this is something very important. So we're going to talk a little bit about more things. Now, yes, this is important. I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen the commercial where there was a gentleman who was giving a video interview and he got the job, but he got so excited he jumped up and he was in his boxer shorts. So I like to tell everyone, you don't want to do that. You want to make sure that you fully dress for the interview. I have actually had some customers where we have talked and discussed about their performance on a video interview, and the interviewers, either before they start or before they finish, I've had a few of them who've said that they've actually asked them, can they do them a favor and please stand up and turn around? So, this is something that an interviewer can ask you. They want to see, the reason why they ask that is they want to see, are you fully prepared for the interview? And are you excited about the interview? So I tell everyone, make sure that you fully dress in interview attire. The most that you'll probably be in that attire is probably no more than an hour and a half to 2. Research the company also when it comes to dressing. Yes. Do you want to find out, are they a professionally conservative organization? Like I said, do they wear suit and tie? Are they business casual or relaxed in style? Some companies will allow you to dress in that fashion, or sometimes it can be someone who's just working in back office, but they're still communicating with customers, vendors, and clients out there. So I always tell everyone it's so important to learn and know what the company's dress code is. Also, you can tell from their website, their social media accounts, or even if you see employees who work for them on some of their profiles, that can give you, an idea of typically what they will wear. Okay. And definitely make sure you choose outfits that does align with the company's culture and, like I said, their dress code. Okay. Another area is I like to tell you that you need to be mindful of what will show on camera and how it's going to appear on the other end. So if you ever have to prepare yourself for that video interview, you need to be mindful also of what's going on behind you too, because they can also see those things. So we'll talk about location and all of that and what you should do, but be very mindful of what will show. Now let's talk about colors now. Wearing white may be okay for in person, but I also tell people you can wear white, but it might show up as too bright, especially if you have a white background. So if you have a white wall or a white background, wearing a white blouse or a white shirt might be something that can glare with the webcam. So I tell everyone be cautious of that. Now, when can you wear white? You still can wear white if you have a dark overlay. So let's say, for example, you have a blue blazer or a gray or a black blazer, something that's darker over the white that can be fine, especially also if you have just a white wall. Busy patterns, they look great in person, but I do tell people they can be distracting and busy for the camera. So you do want to stick with solid colors. Okay, simple, rich colors that can work. I'm just going to give you some examples. Pastel colors, yes, they can work. Mustard yellow, and I'm going to tell you why, because it's a darker yellow. You don't want something too bright. Dark reds. I like to tell everyone if you're going to wear something like reds, you want it to be a darker red. You also can have a darker overlay over it so it doesn't come out too bright. Sapphire blues and also plums. So these are just some examples of colors that can possibly work when you are doing your video interview. All right, so now let's talk about preparing the environment. How do you set up for a video interview? Well, think about these things first. You need to think about where you're going to set up for the interview, what kind of background you're going to use. Two of the most important setup things that you want to get a handle on before the actual interview is number one, location. That's very important. Decide which location you're going to use. And also, if you're thinking about colors for your background, make them solid wall colors. Colors like tan, gray, light blue. The reason why I'm telling you solid is because whatever you have going on behind you, that interviewer can tune out and focus on that. So it's easier for them to focus on you with your background being plain or having such a, a earth tone color or so forth. All right, so how do you make sure you set up the technology correctly? All right, so consider the following major components. Make sure you do get familiar with the software in advance before the interview. Lighting is something huge, which I tell everyone. You want to make sure that your lighting is fine. Okay. A good example. My lighting was giving me a little issues this morning. I tried to bring out my, and we'll talk about that, my ring light, but you have to make sure that your lighting is good. All right, so let's move on. Now, we find that when you're facing a window instead of a wall, that natural light coming in is very helpful. Okay, so if it's a sunny day, that can definitely help. Also, make sure you create some spacing between you and what's behind you and the wall. So that way it doesn't look like you're too close to it. Now, like I said, if you don't have a ring light, you can use a lamp or so forth. But if you do have a ring light, that definitely helps. That's actually a light that can go different shades and tones to help you out with the lighting. And let's say, for example, it's a rainy day, you don't have a ring light, you don't have the good lighting you need. This is where it's an exception. You can put something behind you. You can put a desk or a table and a lamp to go ahead and help you with the lighting part. Okay, now let's talk about your technology, which is really important. Determine what devices you will be using in the interview, which is really, really important. Get your camera and your audio settings established well before the interview. Know your camera's capabilities. So in other words, don't learn it when you have to do the interview. You have to take that extra time out in preparation to learn how to maneuver and navigate your settings and so forth. Double check your settings, test them out before the interview, so that way you're well prepared. Okay. And also, when it comes to positioning your camera, let's say you're working with an external camera, I always tell everyone it's always better to make it parallel to your face, because if you're looking into the camera, for the other person on the other end, it's as if you're looking at them. Now, if you have it slightly below, it's a little difficult. You don't want it to look like you're looking down into the camera. So always try to see if you can position your camera parallel to your face, so that way you're looking into the camera and it seems like for the other person that you're looking at them. So that mimics pretty much the in-person physical face-to-face. All right, so how do you practice for a video interview? Well, number one, make sure you practice ahead of time and consider the following. If you have to download software ahead of time, do this well in advance of the interview. And the reason why I tell everyone to do that, you need to learn how to navigate it, especially if it is a customized link that they are sending you. It's a great way to take a tour in that platform, that software platform. You may want to Google it. And see how to navigate. And sometimes they may even have practice interview session for you to use. So I tell everyone it's always worth it to go ahead and make sure that you know how to, navigate on their software. Get logged in and make sure that you know how to navigate the platform. Now, another thing is if you're doing a live interview, you should be logging in 10 to 15 minutes ahead of time. You should be waiting on them and you don't want them to be waiting on you. That also shows punctuality. Find some common interview questions while you're doing your research through the internet, or even look for questions that the company might actually ask. And you can find that also on Glassdoor. You can see if that company is on Glassdoor and look at the reviews, and also a section where you will see individuals who may have had an interview with them. Another great way to do this is if you can find someone to practice with, especially if you're camera shy. This is a great thing to do. Practice with someone, get feedback from them on the content, what you're saying. Are you responding well? The tone, the outfit you're wearing, and also the lighting and the background. So these are some areas that they definitely can help critique you when it comes to practicing for a video interview. All right. So if it's a one-way interview, now, like I said, if you're able to access those questions based on dialoguing with whoever's coordinating it or sending you an email, you can ask them. By any chance, would they know what the questions look like? They may not, but it doesn't hurt to ask. They can probably, gear you in a direction on what you should really be focused on. If you can, and you don't have someone to help you, you may want to record yourself and evaluate how you look and how you sound. And then go back and look at the recordings. Other things to consider is always pay attention to movement. Try to stay as still as possible. I know sometimes we get nervous. You don't want to be fidgety in front of the camera. So pay attention to your movement. Practice also, which, believe it or not, for a lot of people, it can be difficult. Looking into the eye of the camera and not at the middle or the side of the screen and so forth. So you definitely want to do that. All right, so in conclusion, how do you end a video interview? Well, number one, I always tell everyone, if this is new to you and you're practicing, you want to practice through the end. You don't want to keep cutting in the middle and starting over. You want to go ahead and practice through the end and then go back and critique or see how you've done, especially if you're not feeling fully confident. Because a lot of times, let's say you're recording yourself, you may have done even better than you even thought. A lot of times we are our largest, we're our biggest critics. So I tell everyone, go through the whole thing. If it is a two-way, which is a live one, make sure to ask about, this is where the questions comes in. Ask about the next step at the end of the conversations, questions like what happens from here, or what is the timeline looking like for them to hire someone? What is it, are they close or are they still looking? Would they like follow-up information from you that might help support their decision-making? and so forth. So those are just like some examples of questions that you can use for the 1 to 3 or 4 questions you want to ask the interviewer towards the end. All right. So in conclusion, I do want to go ahead and go through the things that you don't want to do. Number one, you don't want to be too casual. You want to take this seriously, especially if you really want that job. So you want to show up, and you want to show up professionally and dress attire and so forth. Don't allow any disruptions to happen that can could have been prevented. In other words, just make sure you get all of that in order, especially when it comes to your environment. Stay away from jokes and humorous comments. You don't know how that's going to go on the other end. Take time to articulate. Like I said, some of these platforms has ATS systems and artificial intelligence built in. A good example is we like to say fillers. I know I like to say fillers, and I'm always looking at how many times I'm saying my fillers, saying things like ums, uhs, and saying too many ands. You may want to go ahead and try to do a practice of that and say how many times you say it within 2, 3, or 5 minutes. And you want to, of course, diminish that. Don't look away from the camera. Never answer your phone. Of course, that should be number one on your checklist. It should be on silent, not even vibrate. You can hear it sometimes through the audio. And don't assume your connections are well. Make sure you double check. And of course, never be late. Okay. Last thing, of course, I believe this is the last one. Thank you notes. People forget about that. You want to make sure you get your thank you note out. Send that thank you email to every person you spoke with if you have their contact information. Otherwise, send a thank you email to the person who invited you to participate, especially if it's not an automated one. You want to make sure you close it out well. And let's just make sure that person is who is hired for the job. Okay. Let's make sure that person's you. All right. So I am going to open up for questions.
Dorothy, so thank you so much for such a great presentation. We actually do have a few questions here in chat. I think a couple of them you might have answered already. So
Okay.
I'm gonna read the ones I think may need a little bit more insight. So Mark asked, how do we handle video interviews if we need an ASL interpreter?
Okay, the best way to handle that is I feel that you should definitely have that ASL person logged in. And definitely that ASL person can do the interpretation for you. So you definitely should have that person logged in to help you out with that, always.
Is that a service, Dorothy? Because I know that CareerSource, you guys also have some people that speak different languages. Is ASL services something that CareerSource offers?
Well, that's definitely something that if you do need someone to help you out, yes, you can either, um, you know, pretty much come with one, or let them know you need one, and we will make arrangements to make sure that you do have one. And of
Okay,
course, set up a
perfect.
time that way everyone can come.
Perfect. Okay. And I also see Mark had another question, said, how do we kindly inform the recruiter or interviewer that we can't stand up due to a disability without thinking that they will reject us by saying no?
Well, number one, it's against the law for them to reject you. You cannot. Nothing is wrong with just letting them know that you're not able to stand up, but you're perfectly competent to do the job. That has nothing to do with the job. So that's not a problem at all. It shouldn't be a problem, right?
Yeah, and I saw some comments in here too, and I was actually wondering this too, as you said it, is just, do you see, is it very common, especially in video interviews, for them to ask you to stand up? Because I feel like that's kind of a weird question too, in my
It
opinion.
is a weird question. It doesn't come very often, but I have had some customers, basically, when we dialogued in the centers, they have actually, and I believe that question came like about a year ago. I had a few customers where they said, well, one question I didn't understand they asked me was, can I please stand up and turn around? But it's not a common question. It's just something that I believe that employer threw in to make sure the person was fully dressed. Because in a lot of cases, there are people who just, may, like I said, dress halfway and so forth. So, some companies do want to make sure that make sure that they had two customers who said something like that.
Okay, and I see another question here, which, let's see. It said, I've experienced, I'm sorry. It says, Carmen asked, if we're having internet issues during the interview, like when it's breaking down, what would be the best way to address this? And there were a couple comments here that people were agreeing with technical issues.
Right. So what I would do is, especially if this is arising, the first thing you want to do, if you're capable, jump on the chat and see if you can send something through the chat, or if you do have, and the chat is not available, you do have the person's contact information who coordinated it. You may want to go ahead and let them know, interview dropped or so forth. But this is why we're telling everyone now. That's a great question to ask before, while they're putting the interview together and the event. Just in case we're having technical difficulties, what is a second, a second way for me to reconnect and so forth. Especially that happens in live ones compared to the customized ones.
Right. Okay. And then the last question I see here from Jorge is, what do you do when they don't show up to a meeting? So I don't know. I'm hoping that did not happen to you, Jorge, but I don't know if maybe technical errors or mix in, calendar invites or whatever it may be. I mean, what would you do in that instance?
In an instance like that, I would definitely immediately reach out to whoever coordinated it, and I will send them a message and letting them know that they're on there. Now, if they don't see someone on there within the next, I would say 10 to 15 minutes, I definitely will contact that person while I'm waiting for them and, find out exactly what's going on. But always double check your times, your calendar, and make sure that you're the one who's right and you're present waiting. A lot of times they do forget. It's, that does happen, but make sure you do reach out immediately.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because I know just even personally, a lot of times I'll set back-to-back meetings, and we all know that when the first one's late, then the rest of them are late for the day. So sometimes I'll
Right.
be 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever to a meeting. So I think that's a good point, is to stay on while you're reaching out to them, just in case somebody hops on late and then they think you weren't the one to show up.
Exactly. Exactly.
A very good point. So we're actually right at time. So this was, again, a great presentation. Thank you, Dorothy. And thank you everybody for your
Well,
questions as
thank
well.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you,
and we
everyone, for attending.
all right. So hopefully we've had some new people. I see a couple new names coming in. So my name, for anybody that didn't hear it with the last session, is Nikki Cabuz. I'm the VP at Palm Beach Tech. And this is actually day 2 of a 2-day diversity inclusion event. It's called Take Action, Building an Inclusive Tech Culture. It's actually in partnership with our organization, Palm Beach Tech, ISACA South Florida, Venture Café Miami, and then SIM, which is Society for Information Management, South Florida as well. So I'm going to start out by trying to share my screen again here, and I'm going to actually, I think, pull it up right on Eventbrite, because I think that might be easier. Let me know. Can you guys see this okay? All right. So again, if anybody missed the day 1 or yesterday's, we did record. So we did have a keynote. We had something, it was basically like a workshop series, some different panels. There were different speakers there. So if anybody missed that yesterday, we will get that out to everybody as well. But we do have, so we just had Dorothy from CareerSource Broward speak. Again, we are recording, so if you missed it, we'll make sure to get that out to you. And next we have Joshua Foster, who's going to be speaking. And then at 11:30, it would be Jackie Mitchell, and then 12:30, Claire Marrero. So our speaker now, I'll go down here. So Dorothy just did basic video interview skills. And now we're going to move to Joshua on how to get into cybersecurity, which I'm actually very curious to hear about that as well, because I know we get that question a lot at our organization. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Joshua, if you would like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you do, and then please feel free to share your screen or however you'd like to share your presentation.
Sure. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Excellent. First, I just want to say thank you guys for having me. I'm really honored to speak and kind of share what I've learned so far in the cybersecurity field. It's been 4 years since I started, and as you'll see here in the introduction on my slide, I'll kind of show you the transition and kind of point you to some resources that I think will be very helpful for getting into cybersecurity. So with that being said, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in a chat and I'll answer at the end. And I'll get started. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. All right, are you guys able to see everything? Excellent. All right, so this is getting into cybersecurity. There are a lot of different ways to do this. So I just want to preface by saying this is, kind of major pathways or things that I've experienced personally that I think are helpful for getting to cybersecurity. I work for a company called TiberCreek Consulting. We're a government contractor building HR software applications for Army, Navy. You pick an acronym, we're probably doing some sort of application development for them. But we also deal with commercial clients, helping them assess their compliance needs and kind of building infrastructures from the ground up. So that being said, I've worked at TiberCreek since 2016, 4 years ago. I wasn't always into cybersecurity. I was actually a psych major, and I graduated in 2012. I took the time to try to learn psychology and mental health and, actually work in the field. And a couple of years after, I found out that that just wasn't for me. That's, not who I am. So I kind of diverted pathways. I like to always let people know that I really didn't envision myself ever going into tech and going into cybersecurity before I did and before I learned about it. So that's why I always feel passionate about giving back and letting people know that this is a path that you can achieve. And I think that this, seeing this path here is kind of evidence of that. So I started off as IT support engineer, and I got my CompTIA A+ certification. I have a slide that kind of goes over a certification pathway, but initially that's a very basic level certification that you can show employers that the ins and outs of a computer system, hard drives, RAM, memory, all those things that really take time to learn. Then I moved my way up after a year to cybersecurity analyst. I started, helping clients assess their systems and managing compliance and kind of just navigating from start to finish throughout the entire process, given a framework that a client is trying to achieve. For example, the NIST 800-171, a lot of government contractors are trying to achieve this certification. So I help them from start to finish. After that, I kind of, simultaneously, I started working as information system security officer for the Navy, helping them achieve what's called authority to operate for one of their systems. And I kind of just oversee the compliance for that whole process, making sure documentation is up to date, sort of walking through each step and making sure they will achieve the authority to operate for that system. Fast forward another year or so, and then I'm promoted once again to cybersecurity operations manager, where I currently lead a team of 7 cybersecurity analysts, and I just achieved my certified information systems security practitioner, which is CISSP. And I'll go over again the certifications in the next slide and sort of what are foundational and what are more advanced. And then I serve as a dual role for a chief operations officer for our internal product we're trying to develop for the governance, risk management, and compliance space. If I'm saying a lot of words that are just over your head, don't worry about it. I'll kind of explain and go through each of these and kind of detail what's needed. So next slide. So here are your typical paths to learning cybersecurity. First, you start off with, the university programs, your associates, your bachelor's degrees, 2-year, 4 years, even 1-year programs all across the world, actually. So that's a traditional route people take, a little more expensive, but very attainable. Then you have trade school / boot camps. I think learning, very quickly, fast, kind of expediting those 2-year to 4-year programs into 3 to 6 months, giving you the direct knowledge that you need to perform on the job training is very helpful. I've attended 1 or 2 boot camps just recently for my CISSP, and I can say that, even though I have experience, it really helps to have a community of people around you all trying to do the same thing. And then the third way is more of certifications. This is very popular right now. A lot of people, can get a certain 3 or 4 certifications, and that really looks good to employers. Starting off with the A+, which is the first one that I achieved. It's that basic foundational knowledge of, computer systems, internal workings, just how everything kind of ties together. It's a very good one to start with if you want to learn from, from scratch. Moving up, depending on where you want to go with your career, you can go with Security Plus or Network Plus is a good option. So you start to then create your path, and which I did the Security Plus because cybersecurity, but there's other ways that you can go, which is, very helpful. And it's very, the certification itself, they call it the CIA triad. But CompTIA basically has A+, Security Plus, and Network Plus. And they say if you have those 3 certifications, you can basically land interviews. I'm not going to say you can land a job because, I can't speak to that, but very good. It looks very good on a resume. I've reviewed a lot of resumes since I became operations manager. And I can tell you that if I see those 3, and with the addition of CCNA, I feel confident that I at least want to speak to this person to see if what they know matches up with their certifications. So those foundations right there not only look good to employers, but they help you learn for the next level to achieve the advanced certifications, which are listed below. So for anyone, if you really want to have a career in cybersecurity, you have to kind of set a goal to get your CISSP. That's the Certified Information Systems Security Practitioner. This is kind of a requirement for escalating your career in the government, in the commercial space. You see people on LinkedIn with the CISSP certification because that just shows that, it's like a gold standard. A lot of people covet this certification, and it really sets the baseline for your advanced career. Then you have other certs that are similar, but they're kind of focused on management. Certified Information Systems Auditor or Certified Information System Manager. These are more of management certifications, helping you with project management, product management, managing the infrastructure as a whole. Very helpful. If you want to kind of go into a niche of management versus going to the niche of performing more technical hands-on work. There's numerous cert paths that you can take to kind of see where you want to go. If you want to go with technical or cloud certifications, you can start with the CISSP, then kind of branch off to, let's say, an OSCP, which is one I'm currently trying to achieve right now. The OSCP is basically offensive security certified professional. It really hones in your penetration testing skills by hands-on labs and hands-on testing. It's not really, ABC multiple choice type of certification. You have to pass the exam. You have to hack into 5 machines within 24 hours, and they give you access. So a lot of people covet that if you're going the technical route. But if you want to be a manager and you want to, kind of oversee everything instead of doing the hands-on work, then you don't really want to go for a technical cert such as the OSCP. So in short, a lot of different ways that you can kind of manage your certification path. I will say that CompTIA A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus is a great foundation to start on. And then CCNA is also something to kind of go from the foundation level to kind of mid-level before getting your CISSP. So that's just sort of the overall path as, I see it in the way what I look for in interviews. Yeah, so it's definitely a good route to go if you don't want to go with more of the trade school or university programs, anything like that. So that leads me into the next topic, which is programming. Programming is kind of viewed as such a scary kind of topic when you think about it from the outside looking in. You want to learn to program because it revolves around your understanding around systems and building. There's a quote, and you can see it on the screen, that says, if you can't code, you'll always be dependent on those who can. And in my experience, it's 100% true. If you manage the product, if you're managing people, you always need that person who knows how to code and who knows how to secure things within the code. It's a very, very high demand job because of the lack of, supply and people that don't really want to learn to code just because it's so difficult. But like with anything, if you take the time and when you're reading and going through tutorials and videos and really learn the concepts and then apply the concepts, it could really advance your career from being sort of management or technical manager to being elite level information security. And for me, that's the goal. So that's why I always try to encourage people that programming is very essential. Even though it is difficult and very time consuming, if you give yourself the window and the time to learn how to code, in a few years, you'll be at the top of the top. So yeah, definitely always, Java, Python, good programming languages to start on. A lot of people like to build their own products and or for their own projects. So, websites, tools that help their company and in turn give them practice to learn to do these things. So always a good thing to do. So without programming, you can't really program until you build your lab. Building your lab at home is very essential. It could be a virtual lab, physical lab. It could be in the cloud. There's so many options that you have, but in short, you really need to build, your own. That way you get hands-on experience. So there's a few ways that I listed here on the screen. And, I just wanted to mention Cisco Packet Tracer. This is an application that Cisco develops that it's not really used for, setting up servers or, very technical things that you might need. It's just used for knowledge and understanding of how things are interconnected. So with Cisco Packet Tracer, you can put 5 desktops and then a server on your screen and then sort of see how they connect, change the configuration, all within the same page. That way you're understanding networking. You're understanding I need to secure desktop 1 from desktop 5. So it's a really good tool just for learning. I recommend it to everyone just because, you can play around with so many different tools and settings, and it really just helps. And then VMware or something similar on your desktop, local desktop or laptop, very easy to install. What it is basically you can run virtual machines inside of your desktop or laptop, depending on what project you want to do. So for instance, we use VMware internally at our company, but I use it on my Alienware laptop to run a firewall. And so I can turn on this virtual machine whenever I want. I can turn it off. I can make a virtual machine to make a website and then turn it off. I can, run a sandbox, which is, if there's malware, I can create a virtual machine, download the malware, test it, play around with it, see where it came from, and then destroy the virtual machine. So it really gives you that ability to customize and build your lab. It doesn't have to be, go out and spend thousands of dollars on desktops and servers. just to build something, you can do this all virtually. And as well as number 4 with a virtual private server, things like DigitalOcean, they have it's basically a company that has servers that you can spin up almost instantly, and then you can maintain going forward. You can build a website, you can build a virtual private network, you can build anything you want on these servers, and then you can destroy or, continue to use them. So building that lab where you can say, I've managed Active Directory, or I've played with certain solutions or tools, really comes a long way, especially when trying to get into cybersecurity and interviews. And that kind of leads into the next slide as well, which is projects. Building your lab is the first step, and then the project is the second step. You always want to be working on something in cybersecurity. If it's installing a Kali Linux box, and then running pen tests or running some sort of scans or playing with tools to learn how they work, it goes a long way. If you play with something like Burp Suite, which is for web application testing. So if you were able to build a lab at home, a server, let's say Kali Linux, and your project was to learn about Burp Suite, you would download Burp Suite and play around with it, scan, really understand the configurations of it. And then you can put that on your resume that you have not enterprise experience, but personal experience. Me personally, when I look at resumes, I kind of value that. If you're if you have projects at home that you're doing instead of, more at work, I think that's great. I always give sort of priority to those people that have the initiative to go forward and, play with things and get their hands on it at home. To me, that's something you don't teach. It's something that you can show people that, hey, I don't have the enterprise experience yet, but I know how to do the job. I can do it at, at any level. So learning the ins and outs of projects, and then, starting to apply those, give you certain skills that, you might not have if you just learn from a book or a video. You get the hands-on. And if you're not, unfortunately with cybersecurity, entry-level jobs are kind of hard, because when you see an entry-level job, they want you to have your bachelor's in IT, or, some kind of crazy certification that you're not even really aware of. But what you can do today is start a project. You can do all of these things today, and then say, I don't have my certification, but I have experience setting, X, Y, and Z up. And then if we have a discussion during an interview, and I say, oh, tell me how you set up a website, and you can walk through the process. It doesn't matter where you got that knowledge. It just matters that you can do it. So you can get it from university, you can get it from boot camps, you can get it from your hands-on experience. As long as you have the knowledge, that's what's gold. So always be working on something, always be, just trying to improve, and then you'll be able to escalate far in cybersecurity. So the next topic is networking. So a lot of people know that this is the core of sort of advancing your career. You have to get to know people. Things like attending conferences where you're hearing, cutting edge technologies. You're first to understand this might change the market. You can really start to learn these things. You can join local cybersecurity groups. There's a few on Meetup in every major city. Discord, which is, a chat. There's a lot of people that just have groups dedicated to learning about different tools, different certifications. Same thing for Slack and Twitter. I always recommend doing some Google searching, doing some kind of understanding of what it is, what group you want to join, and then joining that group maybe on Discord. So I've learned a lot from the groups that I have joined. And what I found that when you join and you start to become involved, what happens is you start to ask questions, and those questions sort of show you where your gaps are in your knowledge in cybersecurity. So when those people that can help you in real time say, hey, I had this problem too, look at this article, or, I can kind of walk you through that, that only enhances your ability to grow in the field. Without it, you're kind of just forced to look on your own, which is definitely okay for solutions, but it just is better with the community. And then you start to form tight relationships, and then even, career opportunities. People work with you in a group, and then, they say, hey, we actually have an opening, and, you should apply for it. I think you have a good chance. That's just a better way to get in. You can do all that right now for free. You can set up an account, join a group if they give you the permission to join, if it's a private group. And then you can just start to, ask your questions, just really get involved in the field. I always recommend joining a local group, at least one. Next thing is finding a mentor. There's always going to be someone that, kind of helps you. And this could be within the Discord group, or it could be within, somebody, or anything like that. But you really want to seek someone that, kind of has the position that you like and can really speak to your learning style. If you're a visual learner, or, you need someone that's a little more direct, having someone that can mentor you will take you, miles than from where you can be by yourself. My mentor, who's actually my boss, is, Ozzy Saeed, and he has taken me. I attribute a lot of what I've done simply from his teaching to me. He's, we spent long nights just talking, walking over frameworks, going back and forth. We argue all the time, but it really has helped me in that way to escalate. Not a lot of people just go from entry to management in this short amount of time, but if you apply the concepts and you're serious about it, you can find a mentor, you can intern, you can join local groups. You can do these things and escalate your career very quickly. So I always recommend finding a mentor, joining local groups, and attending some conferences. So the next step is, now that you've done all these things and you talk to your mentor and you have a job opportunity, is the interview. And the last presenter did a great job of explaining interviews. So I don't want to talk in terms of, the ins and outs of the virtual interview versus, sitting up straight, because as she was speaking, actually, I was like, oh, well, maybe I should do this. And I was like trying to change my background. So, I learned a lot from that last one. But in terms of the technical knowledge, what you want to do when you show up to an interview is you really want to show curiosity, interest, and passion. I think those three things, for me alone, and, as being an interviewer, if someone can show me that, I'm more likely to favor them and for hiring. I want them to see, I want them to kind of, I think those three things are things you can't teach. It's something that you have or you don't have. And if you have all three, if you don't even have a certification, I'm more likely to, pick you over someone with the certification just because of those things. So if you can show that, and that will show also, naturally, if you have a home lab and you've played with some of these tools, then I think that those three things, it could take you just very fast in your career. Another thing is understanding the position and the requirements. There's a difference between cybersecurity engineer and cybersecurity analyst. A lot of people associate the same, two things. They're basically one and the same, but one's a little more technical and one's a little bit more policy and, documentation driven, a little more, tedious. So reading the role and then applying what you have to that role is going to take you miles in the interview. What you can do is, if they have the requirement, just make a little blurb next to the job post that what you can do to satisfy that requirement. So if it's something like, oh, we need an engineer to deploy systems and help our clients with cybersecurity framework compliance, then you can just say, well, for this framework, I have developed this internal server for my home lab. And then sort of, just make little notes and then go through each one. I think if you were able to do that, that would show very it'll show maturity in the interview process, and something that people will look for. And the last thing is always being comfortable saying what you don't know. I think this is one of the biggest things that, it's very hard for, entry level jobs, when people come in and they want to land the job, but they're trying to still understand, the process. And as an interviewer, you can see that, and you can see that, where they're where the gaps are and where you're going. But you have to just say, I don't know that, but I know how I can find that answer. I know where to go. I have sources. I can get you that answer. I could look on Google. I wouldn't have a job without Google. It's the best. But I think if someone was able to confidently and comfortably say, I don't know, it does better for you than just sort of trying to work around the topic or whatever the question is. It just sort of shows that you can do that, and you can sort of just be comfortable in that way. So always be comfortable saying, I don't know, but I can find the answer. I think that goes a long way in interviews, especially with the technical questions, because they will come. Let's see. So next, just in summary, the foundational key skills I would say is, start learning programming skills. There are numerous free video resources, interactive resources you can learn for free on the internet right now. You can look at Pluralsight, which is a great platform. Professor Messer, he does videos on YouTube that are free. For A+, Security Plus, some of these certifications, I don't think there's anyone better. I've done a couple of different certification video series, and his was by far the best in my opinion. So I always recommend people for Professor Messer videos. His name's just great, and he just has great content. And then, really building your lab. I think that, right now you're able to, based on, what kind of desktop or laptop you're running, you can download these things from VMware, or turn on your Windows hypervisor server, and then start, building virtual machines. It will take a little bit of a walkthrough, but there's tons of videos out there and tons of content you can walk through and learn, and then say, I kind of want to go through ABC steps of setting up this server, and they'll walk you through it. And honestly, if you can always email me. I love helping. I really do. I think that if you have a technical question, or you need some guidance, if you don't have sort of a mentor and you're really interested, always feel free to contact. But I think having a group of people, like for networking, the Discord server, that is what makes cybersecurity, in my opinion, just a great community. You have a problem, someone can help you walk through it. I think that speaks volumes. So building your lab, it does take, if you're starting from scratch, takes a little bit of learning through it, but it will all be applicable once you get into your position. Creating a portfolio of projects, running a VPN server, doing all these things, running website, it just speaks volumes to your resume, even if it's not enterprise experience. Like I said before, as long as you know how to do it, it doesn't matter where you learned it. That's the key for, cybersecurity. And then networking, it's just the key. Like I said, with Discord and attending events, you have to be willing to put yourself out there in order to sort of increase your personal brand, and that also increases your understanding. So I think these key topics will really kind of help escalate your career very quickly if you're able to focus and put dedication into them. I like to tell people that from where I was 4 years ago to where I am now is nothing but a summary of everything that's here. I really, besides plugging in the VCR for my mom, or DVD player, hooking that up, I wasn't really technical. I didn't really understand the ins and outs of computers, and I just took the time to develop that skill. And when I was getting my A+, I got an old desktop, and when he would talk about the hard drive, I'd pause the video, I'd find the hard drive, and I would see what it's connected to, and then I would start to build on there. I think going into that level of detail, where that shows that curiosity and that interest and that passion, will then sort of, all compile to help you escalate your career. So yeah, and so that's pretty much it. Any questions or any comments? I'm always willing to hear.
Yes, thank you, Joshua. There's actually a couple comments and questions here in chat. So I got a couple in the general and then one in the private. So the private question was, how do you know if you're just getting into cybersecurity, which side of that you're better at? Because you had mentioned earlier, like the analyst or engineers or whatever, like how do you know what to go towards or what you may be better with?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think mainly it really requires you to get into it before you can kind of say what you'll be better at. A lot of people lean towards the more analyst side because it's a little less technical, but I think if you try to look for entry level IT positions, to get that base, then you'll start to feel that I feel a little more comfortable doing the technical, or I kind of want to be more of a manager. You'll start to understand that as you move along in the process. It's kind of hard to say without knowing, who you are as a person. But I think that, some naturally the engineering route just comes naturally to some people. I don't know what it is. They're just like, oh, I understand that and this and that. And then some people are just able to manage a little better. So they're just able to go down that path. So in short, I would just say that getting in, with your lab, with learning the material, you'll start to get a feel for what better suits you. And then you'll start to be able to build that path to that position.
Very good. I see here too, there's a request for you to be somebody's mentor. So maybe we should connect you afterwards. I think Joshua wants to be Joshua, but to connect you guys.
Yeah, sure, definitely. I'm always open to, like I said, giving back, sharing what I can. And if there's something you want to,
I mean, that actually brings up a good question is, so for instance, you were talking about earlier about finding a mentor. So for instance, like this, Joshua was watching you and is like, hey, can you be my mentor? I mean, what is the best way for people to find a mentor? Is it through, just on social and you're like, hey, I've been following this person and just reach out? Or is it maybe a friend or coworker or like referral process? Like how did you find your mentor and maybe what are good suggestions to do that?
Yeah, I think, with the sort of, getting into the groups, Discord and Slack and Twitter and things like that, being able to be open and vulnerable about what you know or don't know or want to go, I think that naturally you'll find someone that is willing to help, especially in these groups. In that Discord group that I'm in, there's a lot of people that just simply want to help. Every Wednesday we do capture the flag. So we walk through the process of, hacking into machines that are on websites that are, vulnerable by design. So, and then we're just all working together and saying, hey, I don't understand this, what kind of walk me through it a little more. And then, naturally there'll be a relationship that's formed where you'll say, hey, this person is he's able to answer all my questions. And then you kind of just reach out. That's the way I've approached it. But with my mentor, he was my boss, so I guess I didn't really have a choice, but I'm really glad that he was, because he showed me just a lot of stuff very quickly. So if you can find someone that is just, you just have that natural relationship, it could be reaching out directly. It could, which I think is best. But if you have a boss, colleague, it could be someone that your own employee. It could be your, neighbor's kid that is just able to teach you. It's about the knowledge gap, reducing your knowledge gap. If you think someone is a little more advanced than you are, then you need to learn why and see if they can, be willing to teach you.
Yeah, it sounds like, you kind of had a blessing there to have a boss that you could also have as a mentor. But I think that's a great point. What you just said too, is that I've heard some great managers and leaders too say, hey, just because I'm in the leadership role doesn't mean that I know everything, that I actually have employees that report to me that are much better with certain skills, or their talents are much better in certain areas, that you know, sometimes you can have a mentor that maybe you're over, you know, that you're managing. So that's a good point too.
Exactly.
There was another question in here from Mark. It says, is it better to gain experience through smaller organizations that contract with other companies, or with the organizations directly that have limited openings? Said, for example, like TiberCreek Consulting versus Cisco. Okay, Cisco Security.
Right. Yeah. And so since I went the smaller contracting route, that's what I will say. And it's simply because, you know, with the smaller companies, you have sort of more room to grow. They have more requirements, and they need people to sort of do multiple things. With the bigger companies, you get the name, the recognition, but you're kind of limited to, you know, go from cybersecurity engineer 1 to 2 to 3, you know, and sort of work your way up through 10 years or whatever the case may be. But with the smaller companies, you get very quick experience because you quickly become the sort of expert in your organization, and you have to learn, you have to grow very fast. I always think that, you know, going the smaller route is just a little more beneficial for knowledge reasons, because you simply just have to. But that being said, you know, never turn down a position if you have it for a bigger company, because you will learn, and you can find, you know, different ways to sort of navigate your career path and find mentors or anything like that. So I prefer the smaller over the bigger, but then, you know, maybe using the smaller organization to, you know, set up that bigger career path ultimately would be a good way to do it.
Very good. And we have just a couple minutes left here, so I'm going to try to get a couple more questions in. I'm going to summarize one from Janice, because I know Janice for a while now too. Is she was saying that she graduated with a cybersecurity certification and has been a web developer for over 20 years, HTML 5, CSS3, Perl, JavaScript. I mean, she's super skilled, but one issue that she has is she is deaf and part of the hard of hearing community. So I don't know what insights you have on that, Joshua, if there's organizations that you know of that worked with individuals like her, or maybe what would be a next step for her, because I know she's been struggling even just getting internships to get into cybersecurity.
Yeah, well, I mean, first, I would think that, you know, at a minimum, you can send along your resume, you know, directly. I think we would definitely, like, we're in our area in Fairfax, Virginia, finding a skilled web developer is very difficult. There's such a high demand. So that being said, I think, you know, for, you know, if you're deaf or, you know, whatever the case may be, I think for development, it's more leaning towards doing the remote work and, you know, sort of performing independently. So I think that a lot of companies, especially in our area in Fairfax, Virginia, I don't think that would be as, you know, much of a showstopper as it might seem. So I think that, you know, being able just to identify how you will communicate with the team, and sort of, you know, the process of saying, you know, I could send, you know, team messages or emails or whatever the case, and however you feel comfortable doing that, I think would be a great next step. But like I said, I think for especially web development, if you can see the requirements and then you can sort of develop the requirements, yeah, I think that's all really that you can that's needed. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you. And actually, the other Joshua here in chat put a question that I was actually just going to ask as well. Is he asked if there was a lot of remote jobs there in your area, but I think in general, my question was more, have you seen more remote jobs open up in cybersecurity, especially because of COVID? Do you think you're seeing more of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, for our company specifically, we have most of our company is remote right now. And I think what we found is that, you know, we were traditionally always sort of remote, and we had the infrastructure to maintain remote, but we just went to the office. But I think what we're seeing, and just haven't said as a company yet, is that, you know, we haven't missed a beat working from home or working from wherever. So, you know, maybe we start that transition. And I think a lot of companies are going to do that as well, because, you know, why commute to your, that's just personally how I feel. Why do I need to drive into the office when I can do everything I need to right here? So I think a lot of companies are going to start shifting that way. as we start to, continue the more remote, and then I guess everyone's happier working at home, just for cut down commute time. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and
I
I think
definitely
it's
think there's a
great
lot
for
of remote work.
people, like Janice, because I know last night in one of our panels, we were discussing that as well, that we're noticing a lot of the remote opportunities and even like virtual job fairs and career expos, that they're actually helping a lot of people that are part of the deaf and hard of hearing community, or have disabilities, or even women, or people that typically struggle to get jobs in tech, that it's actually kind of opening up some opportunities for them. I've got one last question here that I see from Carmen. Says, how do you share your portfolio during an interview?
Well, I guess it depends on what sort of portfolio you have. If you have a website, I think if you have something that's more virtual, you want to do that before the interview. But you can always just sort of bake in to your resume under a different section, just kind of the key highlights of the things you want to share. I think just sort of having it ready in terms of what the key elements is what technically that I kind of look for. If you can just say, you can spruce up the words, and you can I have direct experience with Kali Linux, but as soon as I see Kali, then I just know what to ask you, because I use Kali, and I know the ins and outs. So just putting brief, short, just statements into your resume, you can kind of share that at the same time and show them that experience. But if you have something online, or it's separate than your resume, then I think just attaching that to your resume, or just sort of putting that as a link to say, here's what I've done. If there's a personal website that somebody has in their resume, we'll find time to take a look at it before the interview. So I think that just making sure that you're able to accurately put the information in your resume or share that is a good way to go.
Yeah, I agree, Joshua. And for me, just coming from recruiting in my past as well, I think, just as a tidbit for anybody on here, that if you're able to save your resume and do an embedded link to a portfolio and just save it as a PDF, that most hiring managers prefer that, because depending on if they use Google Docs or Microsoft or whatever it may be, sometimes it alters what your resume looks like, or links don't work or whatever. So I always suggest saving a PDF and doing embedded links too. That's always, I think, the easiest for most people.
I agree.
So we're right at about time now. So perfect timing, Joshua. Thank you. And thank you, everybody that had a chance to ask their questions. You guys are actually making me so happy. This workshop and the last one, we had some really great questions. So I can tell you guys are paying attention.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joshua. And I know we did have a request from, yeah, we had a request from Janice and from Joshua in the chat here to connect with you. So Janice and Josh, if you want to drop your emails there, but I'd be happy to, help connect you all as well.
That sounds good to me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And we will be back at, let's see, at 11:30 will be the next workshop. So we've got a little over 10 minutes now. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Again, also just a reminder for everybody that I am getting some email messages from some of our exhibitors in the Career Expo. So more jobs are being added. And then also, just to make sure that you guys are stopping by, checking out some of those jobs, you can actually also go to the Palm Beach Tech website, and we have a job board there as well. But our Palm Beach Tech booth, we've got a bunch of the jobs too from our members also. So definitely make sure to check that out. And if anybody needs the links or information, please let me know and I can get that to you all. Hi, Jackie.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I was making sure you were on here and I just saw your headshot. So we still haven't about another 10 minutes or so, but once we get ready to go, then I will actually spotlight you so that everybody watching will be able to see you and the ASL interpreter at the same time here. And do you have a presentation to share as well?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Awesome. Stephen and Beth, which one of you is going to be starting out with the next workshop?
Stephen's gonna
Oh,
be.
Stephen. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry if I missed that in chat.
Nope.
Okay. Okay.
You're good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Jackie, have you ever worked with an ASL interpreter before?
I have not.
Okay, so just don't do anything different. That's all I have to tell you. Present, do what you do, and we will make it all happen for you. So if there's ever a question that you want to ask and one of our deaf participants wants to answer, you don't have to say tell him or tell her this. Just talk to them as if you were talking to Nikki or to myself or anybody else. And so that's the only thing I would say. And don't worry about going slower or faster, or we got it.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Beth.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. We're going to get started in just about 60 seconds here. All right, I think we are about ready. So I am going to start out just some quick housekeeping to make sure, in case we've got anybody new in here with us, is if you are interested in just seeing the speaker and or ASL interpreter, at the very top right of your screen, you can actually kind of hover over and a box will show up that says view. If you click speaker view, then that way you'll see the speaker and presentation much better that way. If you keep it on gallery view, then you should be able to see everybody's faces. Also is as we move along, if anybody would like to drop any questions or comments in chat, we'll make sure at the very end during Q&A that we will make sure to get that to Jackie. And I think that's all for the housekeeping. So let's see, I'm going to start out here just by really briefly introducing myself and our organization. Again, for anybody that didn't catch yesterday or earlier this morning, this workshop is part of an event for diversity inclusion that will be a series. It's the first in a series. We're looking at, hopefully, February will be the next one. Yesterday, we did have some lovely workshops. We had a keynote speaker, some different panels. So if anybody did miss that, we did record it and we'll get out to everybody as well. And I'm going to share my screen really quickly. Let me know if you guys can see that okay. So, oh, thank you. So my name is Nikki Caboose. I'm the VP of Development at Palm Beach Tech. We're one of the organizing organizations for this event. We did this in collaboration with SIMS South Florida, ISACA South Florida, Venture Café Miami, and Palm Beach Tech. And if anybody missed this morning, our 2 workshops, again, it's being recorded, we will send this out. But the first one at 9:30 was basic video interviewing skills with Dorothy Richardson from CareerSource Broward. Then we had at 10:30, how to get into cybersecurity with Joshua Foster from, sorry, I put Timber, it's TiberCreek Consulting. And then now we've got Jackie Mitchell. She is with Jackie Mitchell Career Consulting. So I want to go ahead and hand this over to Jackie. If you would like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your organization, what you do, and then please feel free to take it away and share your screen.
Hi, everyone. So I am Jackie Mitchell from Jackie Mitchell Career Consulting. I am a career consultant. My background has been in IT, project management, program management here in South Florida area and nationally. So I have on a broad spectrum, I should say, I have a consulting company where I do most of my IT consulting there. And I do have a branch of that where I do my career consulting. So that has really been my focus in these past few years is career consulting. Okay. It's mainly, just really quickly, mainly I work with women at different levels of their careers, helping them to navigate through where they want to go, where they currently are, how to make that better and just have a better fulfilling life and career, because the two do coincide. So I mainly work with women, but I do have men that I do coach as well. Okay. So Nikki, can I go in and start sharing my screen? Are we good?
Yep, you should be good.
Okay, so let me get to the right place. Here we go. I'm going to change my view because I don't need to see me talking. So, and I'll rely on you, Nikki, if there are any questions as we go, right?
Yeah, Jackie, would you prefer that I interrupt and ask the questions in the moment or keep them till Q&A at the end?
I prefer keeping it fluid, so you can ask me in the moment.
Perfect, good. I'm glad you said that. Thank you. I'll do that.
Okay. And I'll try to pause a little bit because sometimes I just go. So I'm so passionate about career talk. I'm a little nerd that way. So our talk today, workshop, owning the direction of your career. I am a lot of what you would consider a no nonsense type of career coach, a little untraditional. I go right at the core of the discussion, talk to my clients about what's really bothering them, even when they don't know what it is, right? We try to find what that is. And so I do not sugarcoat too much. I like to give people what they need and make sure that you have the information and the direction, help you find the direction of where you want to go. So I try not to sugarcoat. I'm a lot of a no nonsense type of career coach. And I don't know if that comes from me being from Brooklyn, New York. I don't know. So we'll see. So hopefully this doesn't go too far to the corner of where it's like, oh my gosh, she's being too direct, but that's who I am. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're talking about the direction of your career, owning it. A lot of times we as not entrepreneurs, as professionals, I'm sorry, we as professionals, sometimes we go by default in what we do, whether it's in our life or it's in our career. So we're going to focus mainly on career, but know that a lot of things that we do in our personal lives spill over into how we act and react and how we direct our careers, right? So owning your career, you know, what does that really mean and how do we do it? So that's what we're going to get into today. I'm going to really deep dive into that, try to not give fluff and just really dive into how to own your career. The first thing I'm going to say before we even get started in the slides, I just kind of talk, so I'll get to the slides, but you have to be honest with yourself, right? Really take stock in where you are in your career. Do you like where you are? Are you satisfied? Are you fulfilled in where you are? If the answer is no to any one of those, you really got to take a step back or several steps back and look at the landscape of the choices that you've made to get to where you are. Now, a lot of what I'm saying may sound like happy path, but honestly, it's not. It is, you know, there are a lot of outside influences, other variables that impact where you go and how far you go. Totally get that. But it's navigating through those things, working your way through those things, whether it's prejudices, biases, whatever the situation may be. I can definitely say, as from my personal experience as a Black woman in tech, I have experienced a lot of those things. I've still managed to navigate my way. And one of the mantras that I have is go where you're wanted because you know your value. And so we're going to kind of talk about that a little bit. So let me go into the presentation. If we can get, here we go. How do we give our power away? How do you give your power away in your career? A lot of it is just by acting by default, you know, just going with the flow, accepting whatever is being offered to you because you don't know your value and you don't value your value, you know? So I see it a lot of times, and it's not just women, I'm just talking broadly at this point. A lot of people who come to me or people that I talk to, and I have talked to, they're just going by default. They're just going by, you know, oh, well, this is available or that's available. I sent my resume to 100 different places and didn't hear anything back. It's like, okay, get tunnel vision. What do you want? Oh, I don't know what I want. Okay, well, let's talk about what you don't want. And that's one of the strategies that I use with my clients. We start with what you don't want, because a lot of times I know that people have a very general and broad idea of what they want, but they don't know how to pin it down. So the easiest way to do that is starting by narrowing down what you don't want. Like, we can list that out really quickly on the things that we don't want. Conversely, we can look at that and say, okay, this is what I don't want, so this is what I do want. I don't want a micromanager. I want a manager that supports me and encourages me, right? So we can look at those things. So specifically on giving your power away, we typically don't have an intention, right? And so I find that people who are not deliberate in their careers, they're not sure what they're working towards. They're not sure what their goals are. They're not intentional, right? You have to be intentional about what you're doing. You have to have a strategy. And these things come in time, but you just really have to have a strategy on where you want to go. And another item here regarding giving your power away, boundaries, not setting boundaries. A lot of times we don't set boundaries because we don't know what our boundaries are. How do you identify your boundaries? Take a step back. A lot of this is a lot of reflection on where you are. So take a step back. What have I allowed so far? You know, what have I not said anything about because I was uncomfortable, or I didn't have the confidence to say something, or I just really didn't know my value. So I just allowed certain things, right? Not setting boundaries, not being intentional, not working towards your goals. You give your power away to other people because now they're leading you, right? And so in your career, sometimes you have these feelings of inadequacies, right? You don't really believe in yourself, or imposter syndrome, so many different things. You'll let others guide you because you feel that they know best and they know what's best for you. Or there's an opportunity that came available and someone is pushing you towards that opportunity. You may not know if you really want that or not. I literally have a client who is in that situation. So we're working through what is it that you want, not what it is that they want, right? So you really have to know what you want. And I talk about value so much because when you know your value, you know what you will accept, you know what you won't accept, you know what you will negotiate, you know what not to negotiate. And I sometimes don't even think there's anything that you can't, that's non-negotiable, right? But giving your power away to anyone in your life, or people on the periphery, if you will, regarding your career, it is a miserable situation. You know, you're not in a place where you feel fulfilled, right? And so it just feels like you're either following the crowd or you're on a hamster wheel. Doesn't matter the industry that you're in. A lot of the things I think about when I talk about this topic is the tech industry, because that's been my background, but I work with people in so many different industries. It's amazing. The common denominator in this piece of not knowing where you're going, not owning it, is not having the confidence. You know, confidence will take you so far in life, in career. Confidence will take you so far. Two specific things, confidence and competence, right? So before we dive deep into that, Nikki, were there any questions? Are we good?
Yep, so we've got one question. Michelle said, one may know their value, but in this landscape with the pandemic and unrest, the gender pay gap increases. How do you maintain your value without having to accept a position that you're overqualified for?
Why would you accept the position that you're overqualified for?
Yeah, she says, the question is, how do you maintain your value without having to accept a position that it says you are overqualified for? Maybe if she means, Michelle, do you want to take yourself off mute and ask the question directly? I just want to make sure I understand it.
Yeah, I want to make sure I answer you.
Okay, so, for financial reasons, someone may have to take a position that they're less qualified for. And what happens is during a pandemic or a crisis, what happens is that gender pay gap increases, and people are having to accept positions that they're overqualified for, and they're being paid less for. So, I mean, they might have to do it for financial reasons, you know, the position of their dreams didn't, you know, wasn't in their path in time, or for whatever reason.
I love that question. So like I said at the beginning, it sounds like happy path. I love this question. And here's why I love this question. You have to reframe certain things. And it's not tricking your brain. It's not tricking yourself. It's really knowing what you want. So you can know your value and accept a position lower than your qualifications. Because if you have an objective that is, you know, for financial reasons, I need to maintain this. And I am right now, currently, I'm not working. How do I maintain this thing or my responsibilities if I'm not working? And this position seems to be the only one that's available. There's so many variables with that. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. So with that, I would say, yes, you could definitely know your value, but at the same time, what are you willing to accept, right? What are you willing to walk away from? And that's a big thing, because I've been in that position where I wasn't working and I had to maintain. And I noticed that, you know, I had initially said to myself, I'm going to take the first thing that came. And I didn't, because it wasn't aligned with the values that I had at that moment, right? Or just my values, just generally speaking. I trusted myself that something else is going to come along, or I'm going to go after that other thing and make sure that I get it, or position myself in such a way where I can get that other thing. I never coach anyone into taking the first thing that comes. When you work out of a mindset of scarcity and you know, fear, that's where a lot of things blow up for you. So you can definitely take a position that is lower than where you ideally want to be, but have goals around that, or an objective around that. Is it short term? If it's short term, what are the things that I will be getting from this position? Because you don't have to be miserable in it. If you're going to go down the path of, let me take the first thing that comes, or choose from those first few things because there is a pandemic, that is such a loaded question, because there's so many things behind that where you should be prepared regardless. You know, you should be prepared. You should, and I'm using that word very strongly, you should be in a position where, pandemic or no pandemic, you're in a career that is that can withstand that, right? That's ideal. If that is not your situation, what are the things that you have done to put you where you are? So now that's behind you. What do I need to do to get back to where I need to be? So the clear line to gaining and getting to success is not always a straight line. Sometimes you have to take that left turn. Let me take this position. But if you're going into that position, oh my gosh, this is not where I want to be, this is not what I really want, and you have that cycle in your head, you're not going to do great at whatever that thing is that you are overqualified for. So what are the things that you can find in that position that will possibly help be a stepping stone to something else that you like to do, or you know, just have around it the mindset, or reframe and say, you know what, this is temporary. I need to do this because I got to pay my light bill, or I need to do this because, you know, I just have to maintain where I am right now because I'm not working, right? So there's a lot behind that. And I do understand that there are a lot of people in that position. It's, you know, you're going to fall into one of two camps. One being, you know, I know what I want. It's going to be out there for me. I'm going to hold out until I get it. And they're comfortable in doing that. Then you have other people, and this is no judgment zone. Then you have the other folks who are in the camp of, I have to take what comes next because I don't have that cushion for whatever reason, financial cushion. I financially have to do that. That's okay. But you still know your value. You're still in a place where you're motivated to do the things that you should and have to do, because financially you're not, not in a position to, you believe you're not in a position to make certain choices. I hope that answered your question.
Yes,
or
that
gave a little insight.
yes, that did. And I have been holding out for the right position. I have a project management and implementation specialist background, so I should be able to get a remote position at the very least. And I've been applying.
A remote position. You will.
Yeah.
You will. It's interesting. It kind of goes off on a little curve, but so many people have reached out to me. How, what do you think about what's going on? I'm like, put your blinders on. I know people right now who have gotten promotions in the pandemic. I know people who have gotten positions that they've been waiting for months during the pandemic. So it's not like there aren't jobs out there, especially in IT. They're there. They're definitely there. You just have to be open, and we'll kind of talk about that in the next part of the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nikki, anything else?
Nope, you're good so far.
Okay. All right. So giving away your power. I hope that made sense. And me giving a little bit of insight into how I coach and talk to my clients is really just like that. It's just like, this is where we are. This is what you want to do. Understand the reasons why you're doing it. There really honestly is not a right or wrong, but if we kind of go back down the path of why we give away our power or how we give away our power, it's just in that, in not knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and not being comfortable in it and confident in it. Value is such a big thing. I have my clients do a whole value workbook because that takes them through the entire coaching process. And at the very end, you still have this list of priorities of values, because every decision that you make, every question that you ask, in interviews and during that interview process goes back to your values. So I have the IT background, previously a BA, and then a PM, and then project program manager. I take my BA hat on. I put my BA hat on. What are my requirements, right? Those are my values. Like, I match those up to values. What are my requirements? I am going to start asking those questions in interviews. I will base the interview around those things so I can get a sense of, whether or not this position is going to fulfill me. Is it going to satisfy me? Are these people that I can even work with? Do I want to bring my talents here? It's a two-way conversation, but we know we have folks talking about being the interviewer during an interview, right? So that's coming up next. So I don't want to steal anything from that, but there's so many things that we can do to just make sure we stay on the path of following our values. And that was such a great question, because you don't have to diminish or ignore your values if you're doing something that at that moment you feel or believe is not what you want to do. But there is a part of you that wants to do it because you feel that you have to do it, right? So giving your power away, those are some of the things that we do and that I've recognized that happens when we do that. And so the after effects of doing that is that you're in a position where you're not liking it. You're not motivated. Sunday nights, you're dreading Monday morning. You're just like, oh my goodness, I need more of a weekend. And, come Thursday, you're like, oh my gosh, I need Friday to come. I need the weekend to come, right? Because you're just drained and you're not happy. You can have happiness. You can have a great career at the same time. You just need to know what you want. And a lot of times people don't know what they want, right? And so that's what brings the unhappiness and just the lack of clarity and feeling stuck, so you have to own who you are, what you bring. And in doing so, you just really have to take stock on where you are, right? And so I keep saying that because you have to understand. And if you think about, if you're a FT, a full-time employee, think about your last performance review. hopefully you've had one. If you've not, that's a whole different topic altogether. You must have a performance review, regardless if the company does it or not. You create your own. Look at where you are. Like, how do I perform? How am I showing up? Take stock into your stuff, right? If you know that you give on a scale of 1 to 10, give at a level 3 at work, you honestly, you can't complain about a lot of things. If you're at a level 5, what do you do to make yourself a little bit better? Staying in a range of 8 to 10, you're pretty good, right? So you have to look at where you are and be very objective as much as you possibly can. Because if you're not in a place where your manager or your peers can say, you know what, Michelle is a top performer, she is a rock star. If you're not even, not even thinking anyone could possibly say that about you, take stock. What is it that I'm doing? What is it that I'm not doing? And a lot of it is, what is it that I'm not doing? And you have to think, where am I giving my power away? So really think about that. And it's going to come together as we go a little bit further. But if you are not a top performer, a lot of what I'm saying is not going to make sense to you. A lot of what I'm saying is going to sound like it's so out of reach, right? If you're just getting there, if you want to become that, this will make sense. You'll be open to it. You'll be, you're not going to have the mindset of, oh, I tried that and it doesn't work. Like, you literally look at people around you in your organization that are succeeding. Doesn't matter how they're doing it. Just look at people that are succeeding and just kind of watch some of the things that they do. Again, we're not going to know necessarily the back, not from an envious standpoint, but from a standpoint of, you know what, that seems to be working for them. Is that something that I could, take and mold for me based on where I am with my confidence level and competence? And one of the things I didn't talk about here, but we'll get to, is knowing your competence level and your confidence level. Those are exercises that I have clients do all the time because they want to get to a certain place. All right, let's be realistic. What's your competencies in these things that you need to get to that place? What's your confidence in these things, or just you as a whole? Because confidence will take you so far. Competence will take you even farther, right? Sometimes it's the other way around, but it just really depends on the situation and what you're doing. But confidence and competence, when you own your career, you own the competency level. If you're not where you want to be, you're going to say to yourself, you know what? I need to take a course in this, or I need to take a course in that. Build your skills, build your skills. You have to build your skills in order to get to where you want to be. It's really interesting because sometimes, and I'm just kind of going through these, not in the specific order, but wanting to get to a certain level in your career, you have to be intentional. And I said this before, you have to be intentional. And intention to me is more internal, the internal plan, your aim, where you want to go, how you want to feel getting there. Set your intentions, right? And you definitely have to have goals. What are your long-term goals? Yes, have short-term goals, but obviously they'll get you to your long-term goal. But what is that goal? Where is it that you want to be? Do you just want to have a seat at the table? Or do you want to own the room that, own the building that the table is in? You understand what I mean? Like, where do you want to be? If you want to just have a seat at the table, make sure when you sit at that table, you have something to say and that people are listening to you, right? So defining your goals, really understand what it is that you want. And when I said, look at what you don't want, that filters and gets you to where you do want to go. You have to have a goal. You can't just go through your career. And I don't even call it a career if you're just going through job by job by job. Like, there's no building on where you were before, right? And so you really have to have direction. And how do you get direction? You just have to sit down with yourself and say, where am I? Where do I want to go? What are the things that I need to help me feel fulfilled, satisfied, motivated, happy? How are the things going on in my personal life that can help with my professional life? I can make goals and things like have goals and things like that in my personal life. Shift that to your professional life. Where do you want to go? And who are the people who can help you get there, right? You want to align yourself with those people. One topic I don't have here, but I just want to address it really quickly, is networking. We all hate to network. That's me. Like, I don't like that. I don't like it. And so a long time ago, I learned, and somebody said this to me, they said that networking really isn't handing out your business cards and going to this place or that place. In this climate, obviously we can't do that right now, but it's more of doing a good job where you are, right? Because a lot of people, or people who understand and know your value and see what you're doing and see that you're a solutions provider, they'll take note of that, and they'll recognize it and remember you, right? It's a very small community, IT community, or whichever. Really, honestly, it's a very small community within the different industries. And I've seen that, where, someone will say, oh, I remember this person from this position, let me bring them here, or let me recommend them to that place or that place. So you have to be really good in what you do and where you are. And it goes back to becoming a top performer. It's really understanding where you want to go and how do I get there. So I'm going to pause really quick. Nikki, I don't know if there's anything, because sometimes I just go.
No, that's okay. I've been waiting to see a good spot. We do have one question there. So I think this was more towards your first bullet point on this screen. Mark asked, how can I demonstrate my value is equal to an employer's expectations? Said, for example, my employer's job listing states that a bachelor's degree is preferred, but what if I don't have one? How do I create value that demonstrates a desirable equivalence?
So I'm gonna make the assumption that you're saying in going in after a position or what have you. It's all in how you format and position your resume, right? And so when I tell you, people are sick of me talking about value in your resume, and I read resumes all the time. I used to be a hiring manager. I build teams, all of that. I can tell within the first couple of sentences, or that section in the resume, whether this person is even qualified to move to the next step, right? Because did they communicate their value? Regardless of the listings of the requirements that are needed, if you can convince the hiring manager of your value, and there's a specific formula for that I teach my clients, there's a specific formula. It's, a value statement. If you can get that strategically at the top of your resume in, I think, 2 or 3 sentences, you're good. And when I say you're good, a lot of times that will answer a lot of questions that they already have. And sometimes, and I've seen this happen quite a few times, where they will excuse, if you will, for lack of a better term, certain requirements for a position because you are able to do this thing, or you have these things that satisfy or, provides a solution to them, or makes that hiring manager's life even more easier, right? So you can use your resume to highlight specific things that would be in lieu of certain requirements that they have. And a lot of times companies will say, okay, they don't have this, but this is what we do, what they do have. So you highlight the positives, obviously. I hope that answered your question. It sounds easier said than done, but there are definite ways to get around that, with certain degrees that are needed, or it's said that they're needed. I hope that answered the question. Nikki?
Yes, I think that was a good answer. And I was going to say also, there's a comment in here from Tina saying that the word intentional, we've noticed that's been used throughout the entire 2-day event. So I think that's something really key to think about too, is just having very intentional actions behind everything you do and thinking about the end result there.
Absolutely. And you have to be strategic. very early in my career, I learned to position myself where I am with the people that make decisions, and unbeknownst to them, they became mentors. Like, I soaked in so much. And the key thing that I learned is that you have to be strategic. Like, you literally have to have a strategy. If you look at the people that are very successful in the organizations that you're in, they have a strategy. You may not like it, but they have a strategy. Like, everyone who is successful has a strategy. They're not just going in and things are just handed to them. A lot of times we don't see the strategy behind them getting that promotion or them getting a position created for them. So you have to have a strategy. You have to really align yourself with people who are doing what you want to do and people who are where you want to be. I have an exercise for my clients, and I'm like giving everything away, but I have an exercise with my clients where I have them, the ones that are job seekers, they're literally, they hone in on what they want to do. I said, okay, broaden that cone a little bit and think about other titles. It doesn't even have to be a title, but other responsibilities that you want. Go out and talk to people within your network and on the periphery. On what are they doing? Find people. You can use LinkedIn. Find people who are in positions that you want to be in. If it's not the specific position, but you want to find out, how do they like it? How did they get there? What are some of the positives about it? What are the pain points that they have? How do they solve problems? Having these coffee talks or informational interviews and surrounding yourself with those people, like you can pick and pull from different areas or from different people on how to create a strategy to get to where you want to go, so just really, you have to be intentional. Like, you literally have to be intentional. And one of the things I tell people, it's not a common, and it's not really, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of the word. I just went blank. But what I tell people, do not send your resume out to 100 employers. Like, that's the worst thing that you can do. Having intent, you're searching for who you see to be the best fit for you, and narrow down that list. It could just be 5 employers. Now you're being deliberate. Like, you have to be deliberate, right? Some people will say, oh, that's not enough, I may not get it. Well, then you're not going after the things that you should be going after. You're not providing a solution to the companies that you feel are on your top list of, dream companies to work for you based on your requirements or your values, right? If you're sending your resume to just 5 employers, and I use that word just very lightly, to 5 employers, you have to make sure darn well that those are employers that you want to work with, not because they just have an opening. Like, you can't come at this from a position of desperation. The saying, the best time to look for a job is when you have one. The best time to look for a job is when you have one. When you're not in a position, or if you're not employed, for whatever reason, a lot of times people move in fear. They move in the direction of fear. Oh my gosh, my mortgage is coming up, or my this is coming up, or whatever the situation is, they move in fear. So the best time to look for a new position is when you already have one. Again, happy path. I do get it. There are things that you can do either way, but being deliberate, making sure that you know what you're going after and doing the different things to just get there. Something I want to touch on that I didn't speak about is managing up. And I talked briefly about performance reviews. Those are areas where you have to be deliberate and where you can control the direction of your career and how you get to where you want to be. But you have to come at it from a standpoint of, I know my worth, I know my value. Then you think about, does this company still satisfy my needs? And you also have to think about negotiation and be ready to walk away. In any relationship, in any negotiations, you have to be willing and ready to walk away. So what does that mean? You position yourself. And this is when I say you have to own your stuff. You position yourself in such a way where you can walk away from the table, where you can walk away from what does not serve you. Some people think that that is just, Pollyanna, and anybody, not anybody can do that. Well, if you valued yourself, you definitely would. If you know what you're competent at, you know what you bring, you will not accept anything less than that. Nikki, any questions, any comments there?
Nope, not yet. You're good.
Okay. So just really quickly on are we good on time? Because I don't see anything.
Yeah, so it's I've got 12:11, so we have this scheduled till you've got another like 10-15 minutes.
Okay. I may not take up all the time, but I just want to talk a little bit more about managing up and performance reviews. Those are areas just to kind of go a little bit deeper and give you some more insight into that. Performance reviews, you want to prepare months in advance for it. You want to make sure that and this is being intentional. This is being direct. This is owning your stuff, like not putting it in someone else's hands, i.e. your employer, your manager, not making it where they determine when certain things happen or if they happen. So let's say, for instance, your company does not do performance reviews. That's on them. What's on you is to now take it into your hands to make sure that you set goals for yourself, talk with your manager, what are their expectations? And so they sometimes can align, a lot of times they do align, or you make them align. And then you add your specific goals. And there may be goals that you have just in your head where you want to go. And then there are goals for the specific role. What do I want to accomplish? Because once you hit those goals out of the park, you start to become a top performer in your employer's eyes, if you will. If you're not, then here's what is something that you may not be doing that would be considered, in my mind, wrong, would be not having those quarterly reviews with your manager, not having those bi-weekly meetings with them, being top of mind, understanding what their pain points are, because your job is to alleviate their pain. A lot of people don't believe that, but it's true. You will see top performers take on responsibilities that are their managers. And I'm not saying to do their job. I'm saying to help them have it a little bit easier. That sounds like me saying, okay, putting all this stuff on yourself. Where this gets a little, confusing to some people, and let me try to simplify it, I should say, is really, again, where do you want to go? What are the things that you are willing to do to get you to where you want to go? Early in my career, it was find out what my manager's pain points are. Okay, I'm going to find out. How do I find out? We're having conversations regularly. And I'm checking in with them, and they may say, hey, I'm doing this project and I need help on this part of it. Okay, I can help you, and it's not all the time that situation, but it may be where you see that they're having difficulty with something and you know how to do it. Ask them if they would like your assistance. Tell them this is something that you can do. You can, help them with it, or whatever the situation is. But in becoming a top performer, it's how your manager, how your organization sees you. If they see you as a solutions person and not someone who's always coming with problems, you're on your way to that. So it's really a lot about you. Regardless of anybody else and what other people are doing, a lot of it is about you. And when I say own it, you have to own your strengths, and you have to own your weaknesses. You have to own the attitude and the personality that you have. You have to own how you show up in this space. and how they perceive you is how they perceive you. But a lot of times, if you get that feedback, you can take that and say, okay, let me take stock in where I am and who I am in becoming a top performer, because all of this is about becoming that top performer, becoming the solutions person, because that will only get people to notice you, to remember you. And then as they go up in their careers and expand out their networks, you may come top of mind. Hey, I know this person who's great at this thing. That's the networking I was talking about, right? And becoming a top performer, willing to do certain things and take certain projects that other people won't take. You got to think in your mind, what's my objective here, right? And take those things. And a lot of times these are folks who are, mid-career and want to get to certain levels that they've defined for themselves. And it could be anybody as well, right? Even executives who, want to do other things. Becoming a top performer is key, like literally is the key to being deliberate. How do I own my career? I have to own where I am, and I have to own making a plan to get there. Others who are not supportive of that plan, do I need to be in that place? Am I in an organization that supports me in my career growth? Now, we could be selfish, which I do promote being selfish. And when I say that, it's not in a mean way. It's doing things for you so that then now you can do for others, right? And so what's the win-win with you taking certain courses and career development? What's that benefit to the organization? So think about those things when you're doing your performance review. So just really quickly to kind of go back to performance reviews, you want to take hold of that. If your company does not have that, you can create that with your manager. If they're not willing to do that, now take a step back and say, is there growth in this company for me? If there isn't, what does that do to my road of success? If it doesn't fit, you have to be willing to walk away. You have to be willing to say thank you, but no thank you. I need to move in this direction and work in this organization or be my own boss, whatever that looks like for you, in owning it. And so that's what I mean by owning it. And I have one here, be open to the winding road. The path to success, and however you define success for yourself, is not always a straight line. If I look at my career path, it was like zigzag, but it's so okay. And I'm so okay with that, because what looked like to some people as a step back, it was for me understanding what that role brought to me was, whether it was me not getting the pay that I deserved, but I was able to get the skills, build on skills, gain skills. I accepted that. So I tell people, look at the different positions. What is it that you want? What do you want? What do you not want? What can help you get to where you are? So certain positions sometimes are just stepping stones. That is totally okay. Certain positions, you take it because of the pay. That's okay too. But when you're in there, try to build and craft a development plan for yourself that can get you to where you want to go. Maybe it's not with that company, but somewhere else. But it's also a good thing as well, because if you're at a certain level, you can now negotiate even higher in another direction, in another organization possibly. So a lot of these things, when I say own the direction of your career, you're really taking charge, getting in the driver's seat, not accepting absolutely everything that comes your way because you think that is the only thing. You don't necessarily have to just accept what comes your way. You can negotiate, you can ask, you can go out there and put yourself out there and say, this is what I want, and look and see what companies align to that, and move in that direction. And so the last thing I want to talk about briefly is branding. And so branding is, to me, a very big thing, right? It's in how others see you. Own it. and control it. Just be mindful again of how you're showing up. Be mindful of the work that you're doing, the quality of the work that you're doing. Be mindful also, in tech, and I'm gonna pick on tech because I have seen where people have come to me and said, hey, should I get this certification, that certification? And I'm like, what are you trying to do? Well, they don't know. So I'm just going to get everything and then something is going to hit wrong. So if I have my name, Jacqueline Mitchell, with all these certifications at the end of my name, it means absolutely nothing. Like, it literally means nothing. It tells me when I see that and they're all disjointed, it tells me when I'm looking at a resume or looking at a LinkedIn profile, this person may not have known what they wanted to do, or they seem all over the place. Now, if you're going to have that, whittle it down to what makes sense for what you're going for, right? As far as what you publish, that's what I'll say on that. But knowing what you want, definitely helps you with going in that direction. But as far as branding is concerned, it's your external persona, right? How people see you, how they perceive you, again, with the networking, or, is this a solutions person, or is this a complainer? Is this person someone who always brought problems? Controlling that narrative is what your job is, but then again, you cannot necessarily control everything what people say about you, but make sure that you're in a position and you present yourself in a way that you're comfortable with, and you own all of that. You own your diversity, you own who you are, and you show up authentically in that space of who you are. So the last thing, really quickly, because I know we are almost at time, what I want to leave you guys with is be deliberate, be intentional, know your value, and own all of it. Own all of it.
Thank you so much, Jackie. And we actually have one question in here, which I know we've got like 2 minutes left. So, but this has seemed to come up multiple times, both yesterday and once came up this morning in another workshop. Milana asked the question, how do you demonstrate your values as a beginner, or someone who switches a career to, she used the example of UI UX design, said, how do you get a chance for the interview? In the interview, it says, if your resumes are automatically rejected, since they usually want the 3 to 5 years experience. So I guess just asking, if you're switching careers or you're adding a new skill there, how do you even get the opportunity to, for this new job? If you don't have those 3 to 5 years yet of experience, how can you showcase that value or skill?
There's several things. I mean, your resume is a tool, and it's just a tool only. You cannot hide, air quotes, hide behind your resume. You literally have to go out there and talk to people and express that, because your resume can only do so much. Your resume is a tool that you can use to get in the door where you're unknown. And a lot of times we're unknown in these spaces. I like to take the route where I'm known a little, I may know someone who may know someone who may know someone, and I'll put that out there. And I help clients to get to a point where they can have those conversations with, what do we call them? People that are behind you. Oh my goodness, I am totally—
Mentors?
Not mentors.
Coaches?
Oh, not a coach, but you have to have proponents, and it's not the word I'm looking for, but advocates. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. Advocates. You must have advocates in different places. And how do you do that? You have to build your network. You have to talk to people, let people know what it is that you do. Hey, I'm not, I'm switching careers. There are so many transferable skills that you have that you don't realize because you've not listed them out. Again, that's another exercise I have people do, but it's not as hard as you think it is. It really is not. You really have to understand that your resume is only one very, 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 very small piece of the puzzle. Literally, you have to talk to people, you have to get introductions, and then it's okay, now let me go down the path of posting to job boards and things like that. Honestly, that should be the last resort. And that's even a strong word. I'm not a huge proponent of job search in that manner, because there's so many other ways to job search and career shift where you're not solely relying on your resume. And if there's anything I could say about that, is don't solely rely on your resume to do the job for you. You have to talk to people.
That's a really good point, Jackie. I mean, as you were talking, I was thinking about my own personal job search experience, but then also my experience working in recruiting for years is that, the best jobs I've ever gotten and were all through connections. I never had to actually apply or put my resume out anywhere. It was all through people that I knew, which really, if you think about it, is an added bonus, because if somebody's willing to bring somebody into their company, that, at least tells you, at least there's not a red flag that they hate their own company, that they don't want to refer you. So at least there's somewhat of a culture there. But I did want to add to what you were just saying as well, is for Milena with that question is, I think, and this is probably something you offer as a service, Jackie, is really have somebody that's really good at resume writing, because a lot of people, I think the old fashioned way of listing your jobs, if you don't have a job that features that, list your skills first. I mean, even for me, I literally put all of my skills up at the very top, because I don't think it matters where you worked. I think it matters what your skills are and what you can do for that company. So just leading with your abilities versus where you were at last.
Right. I'll add to that. Yes, I do provide that. And it's funny, my clients will tell you resume is probably the last thing we talk about. That's not the first thing that we're going in at all. Not at all. It is the last thing, because it is a very small piece of the puzzle, and shifting the paradigm and the way people think about resumes, it's very challenging. But coming from the position where I am and helping people see that, yes, really the resume is a very small piece. When you're using it, you have to be strategic with resumes. Highlight your skills, but highlight the problems that you solve. And it's really not that difficult to highlight the problems that you solve. One way you do that is to be laser focused on what you want to do. Right. And so you can say, because I want to do this thing, these are the problems that I solve in bringing to this thing. And when you're looking at, when I said 5 companies, what are their specific pain points? You speak to that, in your resume, and in reaching out to people, you speak to those points, because typically it's across the board.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly.
I could talk about this for days. So
well, I can tell you know what you're talking about. So I can, and from a lot of the comments in the chat, people have been really enjoying this talk too. So thank you so much, Jackie. We're right at time. So if you want to drop any of your information in chat, Jackie, as well, or if you want to send me anything, we'll make sure to send out a follow-up email.
Awesome.
So if you have any, whether your slide or a one page or any links to information, we'll make sure to include that. And just for anybody that's in here watching, so we've got one more workshop in just a couple minutes here. We'll be starting with Claire Marrero from the Talent Source, titled Interviewing the Interviewer. So I'm going over a lot of good questions that you can ask during your interview. So thank you so much again, Jackie, really appreciate it. And thank you, Stephen, for the signing, and Beth as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Claire.
Hi, Nikki. How you doing?
Good. How are you? There you are. I'm going to pin you here in the speaker view. And then Beth, is it going to be you starting out this time? Okay.
Yep.
Am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen really briefly, and then I'll turn it over to you. My part takes like 2 seconds, so it shouldn't take me too long.
No worries.
And then Beth, I'm gonna put you up there too. There we go.
It gives me
Hi,
a moment.
Claire.
Yeah. Hi there, how are you?
Good. I'll be interpreting with another interpreter. Stephen will be taking turns while you're speaking. You just ignore us, do your job, and we'll do ours.
That's great, thank you.
You're welcome.
And again, just a note to anybody that's in here with us, the job fair is still going on. So that'll be open. We had it 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., but it'll be open a little bit past 1 just because obviously we have this workshop. So it'll be open for another couple hours. So just make sure at some point you, after this workshop, stop in and check out some of those opportunities. And I'll re-drop the link in here in chat as well for anybody that's interested. Joan, I saw your comment in chat. I'm going to drop that here for you. The link to get on there. There you go. So the link I just dropped, Joan, basically will just take you to a registration page to create a profile. You can actually just upload your resume and then it'll take you right into the virtual job expo. And we're gonna wait, Claire, just another 60 seconds, just in case, because I know we were a little bit late on time for the last one, just to make sure everybody's comes in.
No worries.
All the workshops have been great this morning.
Yeah, I was able to jump in at the end on Jackie's, and she had some great advice.
Yes. Yes. I always know when somebody's saying something really good because internally I yell to myself, amen. Every time somebody says something good, I always do that. So I've been saying it a few times this morning.
No, I think it's a terrific forum, and we often forget how some of the things that come naturally to us because we're involved in it day out, just aren't as obvious, to candidates. So it's great to be able to help.
Exactly. And I don't know if you know this, Claire, but so a few years ago when I first got into IT, I think I had been, because I had always, almost my entire whole career was healthcare and like wellness. And when I switched over into tech, my very first event, I think it was the very first week I got into tech, I attended an event and it was your event. You were actually speaking, and it was, I think it was the Agile mindset or something about Agile. I think it was with Ryder, I believe. It was maybe 3 years ago or so. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but you were my very first introduction to anything tech.
There you go.
Yeah.
Glad you're still with us.
You didn't scare me away.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure I can leave that to many other parts of the industry for that. So
yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started here. We're already recording. So again, for anybody that's just joining us, just a couple housekeeping things is if anybody would prefer to see just the speaker and ASL interpreter at the very top of your screen, if you kind of scroll over, there'll be a box that says view. You can actually choose speaker view. If you stay on gallery view or choose that view, that's just the view where you'll see everybody. So you'll see everybody's headshots there. And then as we go, Claire, do you prefer to have questions throughout or to save the questions till the end for a Q&A session?
I think, we can have some in the middle of the presentation at the end of each kind of point. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so if anybody watching, if you want to drop your questions in chat, what I'll do is if it's a question that we should get out immediately, that it's something that Claire is talking about in the moment, I will ask in that moment. And if not, then I will save it till the very end for you, Claire.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I want to, just to start out, to introduce myself. My name is Nikki. I'm the VP at Palm Beach Tech. And this event is actually in collaboration with SIM South Florida, ISACA South Florida, Venture Café Miami, and Palm Beach Tech. So very happy that, you know, a lot of South Florida organizations can partner together, especially to do something around diversity and inclusion. This is the first of a series of events. So the next one, we are hopefully looking at February right now. And if you missed yesterday, we did have a bunch of great keynotes, panels yesterday, even a workshop that we did first thing. So we did record those, and we are recording now as well. So if anybody has missed anything, we will make sure to get that out to everybody. And I did want to really quickly, if I can share my screen, just so, let's see, everybody sees some of the stuff that we had going on. There we go. Hopefully you guys can see that. So we started out with the, like I was saying, the different keynotes, panel discussions, the reception that we'll have as well tonight. So you can still check that out on here on our Eventbrite page. And I will drop this in chat too, just so if anybody wants that information, they don't miss that. Again, the virtual job fair going on right now. We are keeping that open for the next couple hours. And then our speakers, just to recap, again, if anybody's interested in those videos, we started this morning with basic video interviewing with Dorothy Richardson from CareerSource Broward, how to get into cybersecurity with Joshua Foster from TiberCreek Consulting, owning the direction of your career. We just did that with Jackie Mitchell from Jackie Mitchell Career Consulting. And now I'm going to turn it over to Claire Marrero with the talent source. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours.
Mine. Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to spend some time with participants here today. I am fortunate to have enjoyed a long career in IT staffing and consulting. So I have had the opportunity to interview thousands of candidates. And I'm here to tell you that I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, but that's just not from the candidate side. That's also from the hiring manager's side. So next time you're nervously preparing for an interview, remember the person you're talking to is only human too. And unfortunately, you know, many of them may not have had a lot of training. So you're not really, you know, sure what to expect when you encounter an interview. So I hope with today's session, you know, I can give you some insights as to how to best prepare to answer some of the hiring manager's questions, but also prepare you to ask questions that are going to be giving you some valued insights to help you decide whether or not this organization is a good fit for you also. So I'm going to get started by sharing some insights into what is probably the most common interview format that hiring managers are trained on. And that is the interview style known as either the behavioral descriptive interviewing style, or star interviews. And the goal of a star interview is to have you talk about your past experiences in a very specific format. And the thinking is that the best predictor of future behavior is your past behavior. So most interviewers will structure their questions very specifically, and your job as a candidate is to try and dig back into your archives and think of specific situations. But in preparing for a star interview, there are typically, you know, 6 key areas that an interviewer will structure their discussion around. And they are looking at how you are able to demonstrate your teamwork and collaboration skills, your client-facing skills, your ability to adapt and be agile are the first 3 that I'm going to focus on. Now, there are hundreds of examples of standard questions that your hiring managers will often draw from, but I've just selected a couple that are probably the most common, and you may notice a theme. But these questions will help you prepare in advance as to how you're going to answer these situational questions. So for example, one of the key areas folks are looking for right now in any role at any company, is your ability to collaborate and work effectively within teams. So a good one that I've heard asked often is, can you give me an example of a time you faced a really tight deadline with lots of dependencies on other people? How did you handle that? Another is often used, tell me about a time when you need to get information from someone who wasn't very responsive. What did you do? Now, just a gentle reminder that when you're answering any question that seems to come with a little bit of a negative tone to it, you need to stay positive at all costs. Your response has to remain coming from a positive perspective, regardless of how challenging or difficult the circumstances may have been. You do not want to go negative. That also, leads me into the next area that clients are really focused on. And this is applicable whether or not you're in a leadership role, obviously, or a programming role, or a DevOps role. Your ability to be able to effectively interface with clients, business stakeholders, end users is key. Your technical skills are not going to get you through, anymore. So another key question that I've heard asked over and over and over again is, can you describe a time when you had to interact with a difficult client? What was the situation and how did you handle it? I've heard people give some great examples in that type of situation, and they often will provide an example whereby they were able to turn that situation around, and some specific details as to what they did to make it happen. Right now, obviously, we're facing the most challenging times, certainly of my professional career, in terms of how we operate within the COVID-19 pandemic. The ability to adapt and be agile. This is key right now, more than any other skill. Companies that are looking forward to hire new employees are looking for those people that are able to show that they can face challenging situations and work under pressure, because right now that is what everybody's facing. So while it's true the times have been unprecedented, and many of us feel incredibly stressed out for a variety of reasons, and most of us are juggling multiple priorities. We're facing working from home conditions that may not be so ideal. We may have children, homeschooling. We may have responsibilities to care for others, but it's really all about how we get through it, and it's okay to let your interviewer know that, sure, absolutely, these have been difficult times, but some of the strategies you've been utilizing, may include sharing that you've been involved in some not-for-profit activities, giving back and helping out where you can is a great way of showing your resilience, in addition to maybe looking at what you've been doing to upskill or cross-skill, networking groups that you've stayed involved with, generally anything you can do to show that you've been able to remain positive, through these trying times, I think is useful. time management, these all seem like really basic things, but that's the nature of the beast, and companies again are looking for those that know how to prioritize, and they're going to probably focus on how you've prioritized competing demands, because ultimately most roles have multiple folks that they're reporting to, or multiple deliverables due at the same time. And they want to know that you're not going to give your attention just to the squeaky wheel. So a key question that you absolutely have to be prepared for is tell me about a time you've had to be really strategic in order to meet your priorities. And again, you've got to have specific examples. It may be there was a time where I had a major program deadline. The company also had suddenly announced, a new initiative, and I was given responsibility for both of those programs. I had to reevaluate with the leadership team what was key, and I was able to deliver the project that was, of highest importance, even if it involved switching all my priorities. And I think that ability to show that you're not just a locomotion train that is unable to pivot, is also key, in addition to staying in close contact with your executive team, especially during these times where priorities have been changing fairly constantly. Years ago, it was common for major programs to run for several years. That's much less common now. The market conditions require that we change our priorities often, and that can be frustrating, but you need to show that again, you've got that agility to do what's needed in the moment. Communication skills, I don't need to tell you all that this is numero uno on an employer's list of skills, but they may ask you to talk more about your powers of persuasion. I think many in the tech field are asked to describe to a business stakeholder, some fantastic new solution and the value it's going to bring to the business, and the return on investment they're likely to be able to achieve if they make the investment. So typically, that involves, some higher communication skills, and definitely, expertise that can be developed. So even if you don't feel that presenting business cases or status updates or difficult information is your key strength, you definitely can practice that and find some example in your portfolio that you can talk about that demonstrates how you were able to move an agenda forward or get the support that was required for an important initiative. And that may also include back channeling as well. Not all communications and decisions are made in meetings. There is a lot of work that needs to be done behind the scenes, and navigating the organizational structure to gain support for a major initiative. So maybe that's an example you might provide. Your motivation and values, that's a big part of the discussion from this 2-day event is an organization's cultural values, your values aligned with the organization's. So this is where things can get a little tricky, and we'll talk a little bit further about that in our next session. But really, the organization is looking for you to demonstrate that you're proactive, you have the best interests of the organization at heart, and you're not the type of person that's just looking for a list of instructions. You know, you can take initiative and jump in and be proactive and help solving problems. So, you know, be ready to talk about that. Your proudest accomplishment, something you should also be willing to talk about. Very common question in today's day and age, particularly right now. You know, you want to avoid talking about politics. It's incredibly, it's a challenging topic, and in my experience, should be avoided at all costs when you're involved in discussing, you know, a career move. So that's it for the questions that they're likely to ask you on the tell me about your experience piece. Obviously, there are technical questions that are very relevant to each specific discipline. I'm not going to go into those. I'm happy to talk about helping prepare you if you have specific questions offline. But really the framework of the behavioral descriptive interviewing or the STAR interviewing is most likely the most common type of interview format you're going to run into. So if you haven't interviewed for, you know, a long time, it's worthwhile sitting down and going through these questions and really mapping out what your response will be and what your specific example will be. And the other thing is sometimes the interviewer will ask you, okay, so X, Y, and Z happened. You know, what would you do differently? That's the final element that they may throw in to round off the question. And that's really looking forward. So again, it's all about keeping your responses in the most positive light, even if the outcome was not good. So I hope that really helps. Does anyone have any questions in terms of interview formats, the type of questions you might get from hiring managers?
I have a question.
Happy birthday to you too. Woo.
Michael, did you have a question?
Yes, my
Sir,
question
go ahead,
is,
feel free.
thank you. My question is, how tolerable is lying to answer like certain questions if the main part of your response is based on a truth, but you may like exaggerate certain aspects of your answer?
I mean, in my experience, if you're working with a really experienced interviewer, they're going to keep poking at you until that little white lie may unravel. So, I mean, ultimately, the best approach is always going to be, you know, to own your truth, as Jackie said. Even if the outcome was not ideal, you know, the best approach is to talk through what happened. And you may choose to turn that into a conversation which is about, you know, that was a really good lesson learned, you know, and this is what I learned from this situation, you know, and this is what I would do differently going forward. You know, it's okay, not everything goes right, but instead of trying to fluff over it or embellish, you know, I think it's always best to talk about, you know, okay, that was a lesson learned, you know, it's okay.
How do you draw the line when an interviewer is poking at you and just getting you to just reveal more and more answers, and then it would take away from the remainder of the interview itself?
Well, typically, you know, if an interviewer is trying to drill deeper on a particular point, you know, they're interested in and understanding more about whatever that topic is. So if it's getting you uncomfortable, I mean, I've got some strategies for that we can talk about, in a couple of moments. But, in essence, the interviewers drive the conversation, so you're going to have to let them, lead the way. And if you're comfortable, it's just, I'm not comfortable talking about that any further. Can we move on to the next question?
Okay. But you should always respect the interviewer by finishing an interview. It's never appropriate to get up from an interview if you feel offended.
Well, again, in a couple of moments, I'm really going to talk about some of those inappropriate questions, because there's a lot of inappropriate questions out there, and I've seen a lot of hiring managers ask them. So, yeah, we can talk about that in a little bit more detail in a few moments, but it's definitely a real question, and I want to help you navigate that. Okay.
Claire, I did have a quick question. Kind of on that last screen that you were just on, you were talking about, some of the questions that you'll get from the hiring managers, but it always seems like, and I'm asking this question just because we're talking about diversity inclusion, right? So a lot of times you have these, people that are part of the marginalized groups and underserved and underprivileged communities that don't have the opportunities to have had these previous positions before, but still have the skills. They've just never gotten the opportunity to prove themselves. So what is your advice on if somebody asks you a question to say, hey, give me a time when you've done this, and maybe you don't have that experience, but you know exactly how you would answer it and you know what to do in that situation? What do you think is the best way to answer that question, knowing that you may not have the experience, but you're confident in your response?
Sure. I think, again, being honest about the fact that, I haven't specifically encountered that situation. However, based on my other experiences, this is how I would approach it, So again, being honest, I think always goes a lot further than stumbling into, the embellishment side of things. But yeah, I think that probably answers the other gentleman's question as well. Yeah. So this is the fun part. This is where you get to turn the interview around on the interviewer, and the questions that you ask, are actually showcasing, more about you than sometimes the way you're answering the questions that they're asking. So it's really worthwhile, being prepared. Most hiring managers will be incredibly disappointed if you have no questions for them, right? And I would start by saying that if you reach the end of an interview and your number one question is all about salary, that's probably not going to be the best way of driving the conversation forward. There is a time and a place to talk about compensation. And 9 times out of 10, the hiring manager will bring that up with you. But ultimately, there's a bunch of questions that will help you understand if this organization is actually a good fit for you. And I'm not going to go through all the questions because there's multiple categories, but ultimately, the job description is one small piece of the information that you need to know to make an informed decision about whether or not this is a good fit for you. So I've provided some of the top questions that I think, would be a great talking point to help you really understand what the role really encompasses. So first I'd focus on, getting the interviewer to help you understand about, what are the key immediate projects that would need to be addressed in this position. And it's not about firing off 100 questions to your interviewer. It's trying to find a way to weave them throughout the conversation as well. So those active listening skills throughout the interview and being ready to, answer a question with a question, is also a strategy that I would recommend. In these times, I mean, clearly most companies are still having their workforce remote. So I think it's important to ask, what are the tools the company has deployed to support your remote workforce? And that may be the collaboration tools, some of the processes that have been changed to accommodate, collaboration and the general work that you need to get done, in a remote environment. We've been at this now for 9 months, so most companies should have a solid set of tools, to enable you to work remotely, as many organizations are considering, this format being a long-term approach as well. So definitely find out, what the company's strategy is in regards to working remotely. I will temper that though with, some companies do want their workforces to return to the office once things return to normal. So you've really got to be thoughtful in terms of whether or not you're interested in an opportunity that, is a combination of, working remotely 100% of the time, a hybrid, or, you really enjoy the camaraderie of being in an office. But I think everybody in this day and age has to be willing to work, in multiple formats. I think another good question to really help you understand the job at hand is, what are the biggest challenges that someone in this position would face? That really gets the interviewer, divulging some additional information, to you that will help you decide whether or not this is a good fit. Now, ultimately, the people that you're talking to may give you a different answer based on their role in the organization. So I think another important point when you're really deciding about whether or not a company is a good fit for you is to make sure you get the opportunity to talk to multiple people in the organization. Another important aspect is to explore, where successful employees that have previously held this position have progressed to. Has there been a pathway of progression that the interviewer can talk to you about? And that may be different again, for every role and obviously every company. But it gives you something positive to talk about. Understanding how your potential new manager is going to measure your success is really key to understanding the company's priorities and the managerial style of the person that you most likely be working with. So, some of the basic questions that people feel comfortable asking, relate to, how are you going to assess my performance and what do you want me to have accomplished within the first 30, 60, and 90 days? Understanding the metrics and the goals and how your performance will be evaluated, that's important, to help you understand if you're going to be able to be successful in this environment. The traditional performance reviews, there's something that are going by the wayside. Companies are moving to more real-time feedback in general. So don't be surprised, if that's a more fluid conversation. But certainly, understanding what the key goals are will give you a really deep insight into expectations. Questions you can ask the interviewer. Developing rapport with your interviewer is key. Clearly, if you're being interviewed by the hiring manager versus a HR practitioner, they're evaluating whether or not they will enjoy spending time with you as much as you're evaluating whether or not you're going to enjoy spending time with them. So, it makes sense to understand a little bit more about them. And we always recommend taking a little look at the hiring manager's LinkedIn profile before you head off to meet with them. So you can kind of see a little bit about their background. Maybe there's someone in common that you may be connected to. Perhaps you even went to the same university. There's lots of details you can glean from someone's LinkedIn profile. understanding where the company is heading. You know, I think it's vital to understand how individuals within the organization communicate the goals of the company. You know, how does this team that I'm looking to be a part of work to support this company hitting its goals? Another great question to show that you've done your research is maybe relating to something that might be currently in the news, some new product launch, some strategic investment the company's made, some discussion of mergers or acquisitions. I mean, these are questions that are up for grabs. So you may have read about, you know, how the company was founded, but, you know, it may be appropriate to ask them if they can tell you more about a specific initiative that you just read about. And that really shows you've done your research. So that's important too. Questions to ask about the team. Let's face it, we spend more time with, well, typically we would spend more time working alongside with our coworkers than we do with our family. So I think it's pretty important that you get some insights about the team you'd be working with. You know, and going above and beyond just tell me about them. I think, you know, it's important to see if the interviewer will share with you some insights into the team's strengths and the challenges that the team faces. Looking at whether or not this particular part of the organization is set to grow, you know, within a 6 to 12 month period. Understanding the other key parts of the organization that you'll be working closely with, you know, is also pretty useful. So this is where, you know, I implore you to take the time to be prepared to talk about some of the tough questions. Right now, while most of your interviews are being conducted virtually through platforms like this, it's definitely a lot harder for you to really get an insight into the culture of an organization, but it is absolutely possible. You know, under normal circumstances, you know, we would coach candidates to snoop around, you know, when they're on site, to pay attention to the physical, you know, aspects of an organization, to the tone of the other employees. You know, is it an environment whereby, you know, people are laughing and joking, or is it incredibly quiet and somber and serious? You know, and these are things you can pick up just by being within the physical environment. You know, when you're working one-on-one through a Zoom or a team, you're really only getting an insight into that person. So there are some questions you can throw out there, you know, to help you understand, you know, what kind of culture is this organization. And, you know, one of the elements I would focus on is, you know, talking about what was the last time, you know, this organization pursued a bold new idea. You know, can you tell me more about that? You know, if you're someone that's really interested in working in a culture that values innovation and supports experimentation, then you really need to hear that. You know, how has the management team responded to COVID-19? You know, you can tell a lot about an organization in terms of how they have managed through this process. We've seen some incredible leadership from organizations that have had to do some fairly difficult mass layoffs, you know, in response to COVID. We've seen some organizations handle that with grace and really been very respectful and supportive of the employees that were impacted. And we've seen some that haven't. We've also seen organizations that have really thought about the whole employee and how shifting to working from home has put additional pressure on working parents. I've seen customers that have implemented programs that will give their employees some time to, while their small children are being entertained with things like Zoom stories or summer camp activity boxes, through to more concrete, actions such as extended leave for parents and caregivers over and above the OSHA guidelines, flexibility so that they're measuring the employees' output and contributions versus 9 to 5 contact hours, being online. So you can learn a lot about a culture by talking to them about, how the organization has responded to COVID in terms of the support that they've been giving to their employees. So I think that's really important right now. And then, there's a lot of glossy material that's available from companies, HR, organizations, that's really focused on showcasing them as an employer of choice and a diverse and inclusive employer. And there's lots of branding agencies and consultants that have helped them develop some really great looking programs. And many of them are incredibly well intentioned and meaningful. However, to really understand if an organization is truly inclusive, you've really got to understand the team and ask the manager or the director or the executive, what are you doing to create an inclusive culture within your team? It's okay for HR to have an initiative and maybe for the CEO to be passionate about it, but an inclusive environment, starts with everybody within the organization. Supporting employee resource groups is another indicator. Many organizations have them, but how do they really support those ERGs? I know many companies that do a phenomenal job of really, getting behind their multiple ERGs, whether it be women, LBGT, working mothers, all sorts of different groups. And they really are doing really concrete initiatives with their teams to really create an environment where everybody feels comfortable and welcomed. I think another question that might give you some insights into culture is talking through what makes it different here than elsewhere you've worked. Some focus on team lunches, but I think that's a fairly shallow view of culture. So, I'd implore you to explore these issues, when you're in front of somebody. Before we go on to some of the trickier questions, don't forget, when you're wrapping up an interview, to ask, what the next steps are. It's totally acceptable to understand, what their hiring time frame looks like, how many interviews a candidate will typically, be involved in. But also, I think it's wise to ask them, is there anything that concerns you about my background being a fit for this role? Because right there in the moment, you have the opportunity to address those concerns. Go further. Is there anything else I can provide you that would be helpful? Give yourself a moment to think about any question that perhaps you didn't feel, you provided a great answer to. Take a moment. If it's okay, I'd really love to add something more to the conversation we had about X, Y, or Z. You know, I think that's all really valuable. So I think, you know, based on all the questions I've shared here, which I'm happy to share with you all afterwards through Nikki and a link, etc. You can see that half the conversation should be driven by you, you know, and I think that's the important takeaway here is you've got to be ready to drive the conversation so that you can showcase what you bring to the role. Interviewers have varying levels of experience, you know, and some are great at it, some are okay at it, and some are absolutely awful. But you can still make sure that you showcase your experience if you know how to ask them the right questions or turn questions around on them. So I think, you know, as we wrap up, I wanted to share just briefly a couple of things to look for that really do indicate, you know, a toxic culture. I think inappropriate questions, you know, some interviewers are just very inexperienced. You know, they're trying to develop rapport with you. So they may ask you questions, you know, that are fairly, you know, somewhat harmless, you know, about whether or not you have kids. In an interview situation, I would always caution that overly personal questions, your best approach is to try and gracefully divert away from. You know, you don't want to get into a situation where the interviewer, where you're making yourself and them uncomfortable. The fact they've asked a silly question, that's on them. But you as an interviewee, you know, it's your job to distract them. So for example, if someone asks you directly, and this is a question that women get a lot, you know, do you have kids? Harmless enough? Not really. You know, they may be making assumptions that you may not be able to travel to fulfill, you know, the role's travel demands, that you may not be able to work the hours that are required, whatever the case may be. So a strategy, you know, that we recommend is saying, you know, I've read that your company has some really family-friendly policies, you know, which is great, but I'm really keen to learn more about this role and to showcase, you know, the expertise that I bring to the table. So, you know, boom, try and gracefully move on. You know, more tricky questions relating to sexual orientation and country of origin, you know, they are absolutely inappropriate. And if they're going down that line of questioning, that's an indicator of an environment that may not be the best fit for you, because as Jackie said, you want to work somewhere where you can be your authentic self. You know, Belinda Gates and Oprah, you know, will shout it from the rooftops that, you know, you need to find an environment that you can bring your whole self to, and that really needs to incorporate all of your elements. So identifying a toxic culture in a virtual environment, again, you know, I mentioned it's a little more difficult and challenging, but I would strongly recommend don't just talk to one person. If you're going through an interview process, ask to talk to other members of either the team or other managers that you may be working closely with. Just talking to HR is not enough. HR is very well prepped. It's their job to sanitize and present the best view of a company. You know, you need to talk to the people that actually work there. If you can't talk to somebody directly, you may want to rethink, you know, the organization. If a company is open and wants you to talk to more folks, you know, that's a really good sign. And in saying that, also consider the pace of the recruiting process. While going virtual has actually reduced the hiring time frame for most companies by half, you know, the average used to be around 90 days for a permanent hire. We can get that down to 45 now due to being able to schedule people faster and quicker through virtual sessions. You still don't want to work for an organization that is hiring, you know, after just one interview. You know, that's not giving you an opportunity to understand them, and it's really not, you know, allowing them to understand you too well, unless, as Nikki says, you know, you're an internal referral, you know, perhaps from a leader within the organization. You know, they've worked with you in the past. You know, there's a high level of comfort there, and perhaps, you know, requires less interviews. Trust your gut. If your gut is telling you there's something not right, that's what I've always gone with. And look past the superficial perks. You know, free lunches may sound like a great idea. Ping pong tables, beer pong, you know, whatever it may be. You know, you've got to really look at how the organization supports their employees as a whole. So I hope I've provided you some questions that will help you, you know, tease those insights out. So that's it from me. I think I've totally.
Thank you so much, Claire. Yeah, that was actually wonderful. And, you know, you got me thinking your very last point there about the ping pong tables and all the fancy stuff. I like to call that the bling that the companies have. And some companies do have wonderful cultures that have that. But a lot of times I think that's a way when they're doing internal interviews, when you come in, to kind of mask the culture issues. So I think definitely your questions that you had about assessing the company culture and their values, and that definitely to make sure that you're looking at that and not so much the bling when when you're in the office. We do have a couple of questions here in chat. And I'm so sorry if I'm not saying this first name right. Apsara asked the question, just curious, is there a common interview? Oh wait, okay. So I think she's trying to ask, so basically the common question that hiring managers will ask, what is your major weakness? She said, what is the real purpose of this question, or what is the interviewer trying to get at?
Well, I think, you know, they're evaluating a couple of things. You know, one is your ability to communicate, always communicate. So it's how you talk honestly and openly about your prior experiences. So I think the question response that they're not looking for is, I work too hard. You know, that's seen as a shallow response, you know. So I think, you know, you've got to dig deep and find something that you feel is really genuinely an area that you want to improve upon. And again, that's not going to get you knocked out. That's really showing that you're willing to have an open and honest conversation.
Good point. I see we actually have a few questions here. So the next question I see is, let's see, coming from Michael, said, what strategies can we use to analyze the responses we receive when asking the interview questions?
In terms of, are you looking at body language?
Let's see, because he asked other questions here that I think kind of go with this. Said, responses. Yeah, so I guess, so like, for instance, his second question here, I think it goes with number one, says those with limited relevant experience, what specific advice could you give to them when evaluating the responses? So it sounds like, I guess when you're asking these questions and you don't really know what to expect in turn, how do you know if they're giving you the right answer or not?
From my point of view as an interviewer, or the candidate's point of view? I'll address it from my perspective. You know, I wasn't a network engineer growing up. I came from the applications world of IT. So definitely my comfort zone when evaluating technical candidates comes from that perspective. When I'm evaluating, you know, candidates that have technical expertise that is not my background, I focus more on the holistic skills that a candidate is going to bring to the table. So it's things such as, you know, are they coachable? You know, do they demonstrate, you know, a personal, you know, innate willingness to continue to learn? You know, their collaboration skills, problem solving skills. And so I don't really focus too deep dive on specific technical expertise, because I believe if you can learn, if you're a lifelong learner, which is what you need to be in technology, you'll be fine. And then I pass off to an architect to drill down on the hands-on technical expertise. From a candidate perspective, if the client is asking a question about experience that I don't have, I go back to providing an example which is relatable experience. So as a new grad, for example, none of you have 5 years experience. So what you do have is your expertise from internships, from clubs you were involved in. So, I advise that new early career folks kind of draw back on examples where you can bring that relatable experience, because collaboration, problem solving, communication, being reliable, these are all, traits that you can show from many other aspects of your life. When it comes to professionals who may not have specifically done something, perhaps you can draw back to a time whereby you took on something new. Again, in the technology industry, every day we're inventing something new. So, 1 minute it's PMBOK, next minute it's Agile. There was always a day where somebody didn't have experience in whatever that new thing was. Next week it's everybody wants 5G. Well, no one's got 5G right now. So, there's always a moment in time whereby you're not going to have the specific expertise that they're looking for. But guess what? Many others don't either. So I think it's important to look for that opportunity where it may be, there was a time in Accenture whereby I'd never worked on an outsourcing agreement before. But guess what? I got to work on, their largest outsourcing agreement, and we built all the assets from scratch. We developed the processes and the procedures to support this new business line, So whatever it is that they're throwing at you, just because it's new, that's okay. You've most likely done something else that showcases you have the ability to do that.
Very good. And we have a couple minutes left here, which is perfect because I think I've got 2 more questions in here. So this is something I personally dealt with as well years ago. So I thought this was a pretty good question was, is it ever appropriate to outshine the master with your questions about their company, or should you just stay comfortable within asking questions that just demonstrate your abilities?
It's definitely always a balancing act, right? You don't want to be the know-it-all. You want to be someone that's seen as really, hungry to learn, and I think there's a way of presenting your questions so that if the person that you're asking doesn't know, there's a way of finessing, your way through that. And that's definitely a skill as well, is not being so focused on getting your question out there. You may have come in, locked and loaded with 10 great questions, but after 10 minutes of talking to the interviewer, you may realize that perhaps they might not be able to answer these questions. So, maybe it's not the time to whip them out. But maybe, that's your opportunity to say, I'm really keen to understand, more about the future direction and the strategy and the new products, and the roadmap. Would I have the opportunity to talk to somebody who might be able to help educate me more, about these things, So yeah, you really do have to, read the room, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. And the experience I was thinking of, when I saw that question was, it was a long time ago, and there was a manager that was newer. And so I know that they had gotten offended by the question because they didn't know the answer. But I think sometimes too, the candidates don't realize that it may be somebody that's been working there for years and maybe somebody that's new. And I think that's always a good tip too, is that to try to ask who you're interviewing with, so you can kind of look up to see how long they've been with the company, what's their role, just so you don't ask those questions that might frustrate them. But Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's a good point. The final question I have here says, what do you do if an answer about the environment is different from what you actually see after being hired? So I don't know if it's so much a recruiting question or hiring question, but maybe after the fact.
Well, that obviously happens, and I think the situation really calls for, how dramatic a problem is that for you? Is it a deal breaker for you? Rather than just throwing your hands up and saying, okay, this isn't for me. Maybe that team isn't the right fit for you. Maybe there's another part of the organization that would be a better fit for you. Let's face it, the bigger the organization, the more pockets of excitement there are, right? So the engineering team may have a culture, that's different to the sales and marketing team, and there may be a blend of something, throughout the organization. I think ultimately, you got to go and talk to the leadership, find someone, maybe you've been assigned an onboarding buddy, to kind of check your feelings and see if there's a systemic problem or if this is an isolated incident, because managers are isolated incidents. They can be systemic problems in the organization, but I wouldn't just throw the baby out with the bathwater and give up, on one experience.
Agreed. Very good. And I think that's going to wrap us up because we're right at 1:30. So thank you so much, Claire. And thank you for any of the other speakers that are still on with us and everybody for your wonderful questions. Again, we did record everything. So we will be getting out the recording and some information from all of our speakers. So again, Claire, if you have anything that you'd like to send me as well, we'll make sure to get that out. And just wanted to say thank you. And the platform for the job should still be open. So if anybody does want to hop back over into the virtual career booths, they should still be open for you all for maybe just another half hour or so. But that's all we got today. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.